Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the world of shadows, where your heartbeat is your enemy and every footstep sounds like a confession. You're not a knight, not a lord, not even a squire. No songs will be sung about you. You are a medieval assassin, and frankly, you probably won't survive this. You crouch in the alleyway, mud caked on your boots, the stale scent of yesterday's meat pies mingling with sewage in the air. The sun's gone down behind the monastery wall, and every bell toll echoes like it's meant for you. You check your pouch. 3 dull knives, a cracked vial of something that might be poison, and a single silver coin that might be tin. You're not exactly swimming in job security. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I love knowing which corner of the world we're all dozing off in together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the narrow lanes of a city that doesn't know your name, thankfully. No banners fly for people like you. The peasants ignore you, the guards suspect you. You're a whisper behind a whisper, the smudge on a noble's silk. You don't get holidays, you don't get peace, you get jobs. And they all come the same way, anonymous, vague, and sealed in wax you're not supposed to break. Tonight you've got one. You slip the parchment from under your cloak. The handwriting is smooth, expensive. Your target, Sir Anselm of Drakwin, a mid-ranking noble who apparently made the mistake of offending someone richer. The paper doesn't say what he did. It never does. You're not paid to ask. Here's the thing about medieval assassins. There's no secret order, no creed, no cool handshake. Maybe in faraway places, in sun-baked cities with marble temples, there are leagues of killers who drink venom for breakfast and meditate on rooftops. Not here. Here, you're a loner with a bent knife and an ulcer. You weren't born to this. You slipped into it like someone falling into a well. Maybe you were a soldier once. Maybe you tried honest work, farming, weaving, stealing apples. Maybe you just needed money, but now you've done it long enough that people whisper when you pass. You're not sure if that's good or bad. Your feet ache. Cobblestones weren't made for soft shoes, and yours are so thin your toes feel every ridge. You duck past a cart of fish and ignore the vendor's glare. He recognizes you. You know he does, but he's not going to say anything. People who talk too much in this city tend to vanish into the river. You stop at a fountain and pretend to drink. Really, you're watching the guard patrol. 2 of them. Chainmail. Bored. Perfect. There's no glamour in what you do. Not really. People think assassins are elegant. Cloaks fluttering, eyes glittering in the dark. The truth? You haven't slept properly in 4 nights, and your last meal was a crust of barley bread with something that might have been cheese, or just a particularly patient mold colony. You don't feel dangerous. You feel like a stray dog with a vendetta. Still, you have your tricks. You've learned to move without sound, to blend into the filth, to lie better than you breathe. You've learned that hesitation kills, and sentiment is a luxury for people with homes. Historians still argue whether actual assassins operated in medieval Europe, or if the word's just been stretched and smudged over time, thanks to Eastern legends and Crusader gossip. What we know, people paid other people to make problems disappear. Sometimes they called them bravos, sometimes cutthroats. You're just trying to survive until next winter. You glance up. The manor looms in the distance, sharp towers like spears against the dusk. You've seen worse targets. You've also seen better. Anselm isn't foolish. He's hired mercenaries, not just guards. The kind who bite gold coins and sharpen axes for fun. Your first plan is simple. Wait. You find a ledge behind a baker's shop and settle in. Time stretches. The stars poke out slowly. You pull your cloak tighter and fight the urge to drift off. That's how you lost your last toe, to frostbite, not a sword, just as painful. An hour passes. 2. Finally, you spot him. Anselm, riding a white horse like he invented smugness. He dismounts with a theatrical sigh. 2 guards flank him. One's limping, perfect. You file that detail away. That You don't strike yet. Patience is your armor, also your only choice. Because truth is, you're not the fastest or the strongest. You're just desperate. And desperation, you've found, is sharp. As you wait, a cat crawls onto your lap. You freeze. It purrs once, loudly, and walks off. You sigh. You've been made before by louder things, like the time a goat stepped on your head during a rooftop stakeout. You didn't get paid for that job. There's another wrinkle to all this. Magic. Some nobles believe in it, or pretend to. Protective charms, warded doors, astrologers calculating the best time to sneeze. You don't know if any of it works. But one time, you watched a man keel over the moment he stepped through a chalk circle. That job haunts you, mostly because you were hiding in the chimney, covered in soot, and didn't get to do anything at all. The moon is high now. You stir. It's almost time. You whisper a prayer, mostly out of habit. You're not sure who's listening or if anyone is, but you whisper anyway, to the night, to the rats, to whatever part of yourself hasn't gone cold yet. You ease down the ledge. It's game time. You land with a soft grunt in a pile of hay that smells like yesterday's sweat and something faintly bovine. It cushions your fall, but your knees still creak in protest. You are not 20 anymore, if you ever were. Somewhere behind you, a donkey snorts in confusion. You tip your hood lower and shuffle into the shadows before someone decides haylofts aren't for loiterers. Your limbs feel like they're made of wet wood. You've slept in gutters, under wagons, once even in a coffin you thought was empty. But nothing quite matches the morning after a failed mission. Every joint is a whisper of betrayal. Your left shoulder pops when you reach for your belt. You wince. It's not the pain that gets to you. It's the fact that pain is so familiar now. It feels like a roommate. As dawn scrapes across the sky, your stomach stages a protest. Loudly, you glance around. No bread. No coin. You pull out a small pouch and shake it. A sad clink. One rusty denier and a pebble you mistook for a pearl last week. You consider eating it anyway. At least it's mineral rich. You wander toward the market square like a ghost, looking for something to haunt. The early vendors are setting up, cursing the cold and each other. A woman is gutting fish on a board that looks like it's already seen a few murders. A boy sells bruised apples from a stained cart. You steal one. You're not proud, but you're not proud of anything these days. You take a bite. It's mostly worm. You chew anyway. Being an assassin in the Middle Ages isn't about excitement. It's not flashing steel or whispered names. It's mostly waiting and walking and wondering if that lump on your leg is an infected wound or just your conscience trying to escape. You duck into a side alley and relieve yourself behind a barrel. Not glamorous, but necessary. That's the thing. Assassins still need to use the latrine. You're not some supernatural force. You're a person. A tired, underfed, over-paranoid person with nothing but a knife and a prayer. And sometimes a rash. You head for your safe house, or what passes for one. It's an abandoned mill near the stream. Roof half collapsed. Floorboards like puzzle pieces. The owner died of the plague 3 years ago, and no one's been willing to claim it since. You didn't kill him. You're not that kind of assassin. Probably. Inside, you light a stub of candle and check your stash. 1 hard biscuit, 3 iron nails, and a note from yourself that reads, "Buy more poison," in very dramatic calligraphy. You sit on a crate and exhale slowly. Sometimes you dream about being someone else. A tanner, maybe, or a monk. Someone with a routine and bad porridge. But those dreams end when you remember how many people know your face. How many guards are still asking around for the silent one with the knife. You run a hand through your hair, greasy. You smell like regret and garlic. The garlic wasn't your choice. It was in the hay, probably from the donkey. There's a knock on the side wall. 3 short taps, then 2 longer ones. You freeze. That's your signal. You step out and see him, Thibault, a former pickpocket turned informant. Eyes like rats, and a smile that's 70% teeth, 30% bluff. He tosses you a rolled-up note. "From the monk," he says. "Wants you to meet him tonight. Same church as before. Bring gloves. You nod and give him a nod back. That's the extent of your emotional range these days. Once he's gone, you open the note. Parchment. Clean. Smells faintly of lavender. Why do monks always smell like that? Maybe they bathe. Maybe they're wizards. Historians still argue whether medieval monks lived clean, austere lives, or if they secretly indulged in wine, bathhouses, and embroidered robes when no one was looking. You suspect the truth is somewhere in the middle. The message is simple: target confirmed, payment doubled if completed before the solstice. Of course, deadlines. You fold the parchment and tuck it into your boot. You hate putting things in your boots, but it's safer than pockets, which are easier to pickpocket. Or, in your case, pick assassinate. You stretch your legs and start walking again. The sun is rising now, and the city begins to stir in that unpleasant way cities do, loudly, with smells. You keep your head down. You're used to it. Most people think being an assassin means you're fearless. That's laughable. You're scared of nearly everything. Dogs, doors that creak, pies that might be poisoned, the word tax. But fear is just another tool. It sharpens your hearing, makes you careful, keeps you from getting cocky. You pass a group of children playing with sticks and mud. One of them points at you and says, "That one's a ghost." You wave half-heartedly. He's not wrong. A blacksmith hammers away at something metallic and loud. The clang shakes through your spine like a drum roll you didn't ask for. You duck into another alley and take the long way. You always take the long way. Eventually you reach the church. It's older than your last lie and twice as cracked. Vines creep up the stone. Gargoyles glare down like they're judging your life choices. And to be fair, they should. You enter through the side door. The monk is waiting in the alcove. Brother Alric, thin as twine and twice as twitchy. He greets you with a nod, hands folded. "The man is evil," he whispers. "Truly. I heard him mock the poor, spit in the chalice, and kick a kitten." You arch an eyebrow. People always exaggerate when they want someone dead. You nod anyway. "Payment," you say. He hands over a pouch. It jingles. You don't open it yet. You don't like counting in front of clergy. Makes it awkward when you get shorted. "The solstice is 3 nights away," he reminds you. "May God watch over your hand." You don't reply. If God is watching your hand, he's been real quiet about it. As you leave the church, you hear a hymn echo faintly behind you. It doesn't comfort you. You're not a holy person. You're barely a person at all. Just someone walking, hiding, listening, waiting. You pause near a statue of a saint. He looks calm, serene. You look like a raccoon with trust issues. The day is young, and so are the risks. You pull your cloak tighter and melt back into the street. Another job waits. Another noble who won't see it coming. Another step down a path you stopped pretending to understand. Your blade catches the morning light as you kneel by the stream, trying to clean off last night's rust and regret. It's not going well. The dagger, your oldest one, has a chip near the hilt and a nick along the edge that you don't remember putting there. You test the sharpness against your thumb. Still lethal, but only just. Weapons made in your line of work aren't masterpieces. They're tools, practical, dull-colored, and meant to disappear into the night like you do. You carry 3 knives, one for close work, one for backup, and one you pretend is ceremonial but mostly used to spread questionable jam on worse bread. And you keep a garrote, a length of wire tucked into your belt that frays at the ends and tries to cut you every time you touch it. It's a relationship built on mutual distrust. You reach into your pouch and pull out your poison kit. That sounds far more sophisticated than it is. A cracked wooden box, 2 files with vague labels, and a sticky wad of something that smells like sour death. Probably belladonna, or a fig gone wrong. You sniff one vial, not recommended, but you're nothing if not reckless. The odor burns your nostrils, a mix of rotting walnuts and despair. Yep, definitely hemlock. In the Middle Ages, poison was both a science and a gamble. There were no lab coats or pipettes, just herbs, hearsay, and the occasional widowmaker brewed in a basement. Historians still argue whether some assassins actually preferred poison or simply used it when stabbing became too inconvenient. You suspect the latter. Poison has a nasty habit of backfiring, like the time you laced a noble's wine with monkshood, only to learn he preferred beer. His dog drank it instead. The dog died, dramatically. The noble, he just demanded another pint. You had to wait 3 weeks to try again. That time, it was the soup. You still have dreams about soup. You try to mix something useful. A paste, maybe, to coat your dagger. You grind dried henbane with a rock and mutter curses when the powder blows into your face. You blink furiously and sneeze, not your most intimidating moment. Then there's your crossbow. Oh, the crossbow. It sits beside you now, smug in its splintered wood and warped string. You salvaged it from a battlefield, or more accurately, from a corpse who clearly didn't need it anymore. You've only used it 4 times. Twice, it misfired. Once, it fired directly into a tavern sign. The 4th time, you actually hit the target. Unfortunately, it was the target's horse. That didn't go over well. You run a cloth along the bolt and check the mechanism. The string creaks like a grumpy chair. You sigh. You tell yourself you'll replace it soon, but you've been saying that since autumn. Still, it's all you have. There's no assassin warehouse where you browse the latest tools in sleek display cases. No whisper network offering discounts on grappling hooks. You scrounge. You repurpose. You use whatever doesn't scream. This came from a smith who charges rent. In your coat lining, you carry a pouch of caltrops, little iron stars meant to shred pursuers' feet. You've never actually had to use them, but just having them makes you feel slightly more dangerous, like a medieval porcupine with trust issues. You also have one smoke bomb, homemade, unreliable. It once exploded in your pocket. The scar on your thigh still itches when it rains, but it's a comfort, like carrying a secret you're not sure even you believe. Most of your gear comes from barter. You once traded 3 apples and a sad poem for a flask of tar. Another time, you lifted a set of lockpicks from a sleeping minstrel who snored in rhyming couplets. You've sewn poison darts into your sleeves, never used them. You tried once, but forgot which arm they were in and ended up poking your own armpit. You shift your weight and stretch your legs, flexing your fingers over the familiar curves of steel. There's a certain intimacy to your weapons. They've been with you through late nights and bad decisions. You've talked to them more than people lately. That's not a joke. You once had a full conversation with your dagger. It was more supportive than your last relationship. There's a clang behind you, metal on stone. You spin, dagger up, muscles tense. A goat. Just a goat. You lower the blade and glare at it. The goat, unfazed, chews something that might be cloth. You suspect it's yours. You sigh and turn back to your task. The tools of your trade are crude because the world you live in is crude. There are no elegant jewels, no precision engineering, just grit, instinct, and a lot of spit. You remember a story told by another assassin years ago. A tale of a dagger carved from the bones of a saint, said to kill without leaving a mark. You don't know if it's true, but you sometimes dream of it when your hands ache from gripping cold steel. You wrap your tools in linen and tuck them back under your cloak. One of the files leaks a little. Great. Now your whole left side smells like vinegar and rot. You check the sky. Mid-morning. Still time before you have to move again. You sit under a tree and try to relax. Your fingers trace the hilt of your backup blade. Short, wide, blunt, like your sense of humor. Another day, another job. Another chance to ruin someone's evening. The wind rustles through the trees, and for a moment you let yourself imagine being somewhere else. A merchant, maybe. A sailor. A cook with an herb garden and no blood on his apron. Then you shift, and the garrote pokes your ribs. Right, back to reality. You walk with your head down, boots soft on dirt, thinking about guilds. Not the kind with banners and ballads, but the shady, closed-door clubs people whisper about over stale beer. Assassin guilds. Do they exist? Maybe. You've never seen one, never been invited, and definitely never gotten a welcome basket. Some towns claim they've got organized hitmen. The Night Weavers in Ghent. The Order of Quiet Knives in Milan. Sounds fancy. Sounds fake. Most likely, it's 3 angry men in cloaks and a guy with a club named Mercy. You consider your life guildless and grumpy. Would it be better if you joined one? Maybe you'd get a dental plan, or at least someone to watch your back. But then again, someone else would probably stab it. Freelance work has its perks. You choose your contracts, you pick your pace. You don't answer to a man with a hawk tattoo who calls himself Master Viper. But it also means you're on your own when the guards are closing in and the client decides he never met you. You remember a man you met once, claimed he was from a guild in the East, said they used hand signals and silent birds, told you he once faked his own death by lying still in a snowbank for 3 days. Sounded impressive, until he passed out from drinking warm mead and fell face first into a fire pit. Guild member or not, he screamed like everyone else. Historians still argue whether true assassin guilds existed across medieval Europe, or whether they're just the fever dreams of chroniclers and tavern drunks. The closest thing with real records. The fabled Nizari Ismailis, Persian assassins who terrified crusaders with actual coordination and eerie discipline. But you're no mountaintop mystic. You're a mud-slicked problem solver in a city where people forget your name before your dagger leaves its sheath. Still, the idea lingers. What if there were others like you? A brotherhood, a sisterhood, a monthly meeting where you discuss cloak maintenance and whisper about noble scandals. Maybe someone to share tips on how to clean blood out of linen. You imagine it now, entering a smoky room lit by candles and secrets. A hooded figure welcomes you, nods solemnly, hands you a little badge that says, "Initiate." You sip watered-down wine and talk about your favorite poisons. Then someone suggests guild dues and mandatory robes, and the dream collapses. No, you're better alone. At least when you mess up, there's only one person to blame. You pass a baker selling yesterday's loaves. He doesn't look up. You're just another shadow. That's the trade-off. Freedom, but no safety. Autonomy, but no backup. If something goes wrong, you can't call a guildmaster. You can only run. Like that time in Rouen, when you took a job without checking the target's surname. Lord Etienne de something fancy turned out to be the nephew of the local bishop, a very loud bishop. You had to flee across rooftops with nothing but your cloak and a loaf of purloined rye. You don't even like rye. You stop at a fountain, pretending to drink while scanning the square, always watching. That's part of the job too, paranoia masquerading as awareness. Is that woman selling cabbages eyeing you too long? Is that monk really a monk, or just a man in robes with oddly muscular calves? You step away. Too many eyes today. You take the back alleys, safer and smellier. A cat darts past your foot, screeching. You don't flinch. You flinched once, and someone saw. Cost you a job and a toe. Different story. There was a man once who claimed he'd been part of a real guild, said they met in crypts and paid for funerals up front, just in case. Swore they had a code. No children, no clergy, no smiling during the job. Sounded noble, too noble. He ended up hanging from a tree, a scroll stuffed in his mouth. Guess someone disagreed with the code. That's the other problem with guilds. Structure. You follow orders, you trust others, and sooner or later, someone sells you out. Maybe you drop your blade for a second. Maybe you ask the wrong question. Maybe you smile too much. You've survived this long because you trust no one, not even your own memory, especially not your memory. You reach a familiar door, a blacksmith shop, shuttered but not locked. You knock twice, pause, then once. A slot opens. A single eye peers out. You late. You alive. The door creaks open. You slip inside. Marceau, the smith, grunts a greeting. He's not an assassin. He's not even subtle, but he's useful. Sharpens blades without asking where they've been. Doesn't flinch when you bring blood-stained boots. Charges you in eggs, not coin. You sit while he inspects your gear. This one's dull. He holds up a blade. So dull it might be a spoon. You shrug. Still cuts if you press hard enough. He doesn't laugh. He never does. He sets to work, and the scrape of metal fills the room. While you wait, you think again about the guild idea. The appeal of knowing there's someone who'll carry on your work. Or avenge you, maybe. Someone who'd at least put your name in a ledger somewhere. But then you remember what happened to the last group of professionals you heard about. They tried to unionize. A week later, all 6 were found in different wells. You'll pass. Marceau hands back your blade. Don't throw it this time, he says. That was one time. He points at the ceiling, still stuck. You thank him and leave through the back door. As the sky darkens, you walk with a little more weight on your belt, a little more certainty in your step. You're not part of a guild. You're not a brother of the blade. You're just you, but you're still breathing. And in your business, that's rare enough to count as success. You meet him in the shadows of the cloister, where the candlelight doesn't quite reach, and the floor smells faintly of damp stone and bad secrets. Brother Ulrich again. His robe is too clean, and his sandals look like they've never touched a muddy road. That's always suspicious. Real monks have blisters. He gives you a nervous smile that suggests he's about to do something terribly unmonastic. I need someone removed, he says softly. Quietly, he's interfering with sacred interests. You raise an eyebrow. Sacred? He coughs. Financially sacred. Ah, there it is. This is the part of the job no one talks about. The contracts that don't come from whispering spy masters or vengeful nobles, but from people who wear crosses and pretend they don't notice when the money box gets lighter. You nod slowly. You've worked for worse. He hands you a scrap of vellum, a name, a sketch, a time. The man lives above the apothecary on Candle Street, Ulrich says. He often walks alone in the evenings. You'll know him by his hat. That's not as helpful as it sounds. Half the men in town wear hats that look like discarded poultry. You fold the note and slip it into your boot. Ulrich hesitates, then presses something else into your hand. A leather glove. Just one. For the final moment, he says dramatically. So God won't see your hand. You fight the urge to ask whether God is nearsighted. Instead, you nod and walk away. You've heard the rumors, of course, that some monks used hired blades to remove obstacles, secular or otherwise. Historians still argue whether the church turned a blind eye to such arrangements or simply didn't keep good records. You lean toward the latter. Nothing about your life has ever felt tidy. As you navigate the narrow alleys of the city, you think about your client. Monks make the worst liars. They fidget, they whisper. They cross themselves after every sentence, like punctuation. You once had a priest offer double pay if you promised not to make it messy. You assured him it would be cleaner than confession. He didn't laugh. The apothecary on Candle Street is one of those buildings that leans like it's eavesdropping on its neighbors. You watch from across the square, blending in with a cart full of turnips. You hate turnips. They smell like boiled regret. Your target appears just before dusk. Middle-aged, pointy hat. Moves like a man who owns things but doesn't carry them himself. He has a small pouch tied to his belt and a smug expression carved into his jawline. You follow him. Not too close, not too fast. He turns onto Vine Alley, where the cobblestones are uneven and the shadows generous. Perfect. You slip along the wall, hand near your blade, the monk's glove tucked into your sleeve. Then he stops. You freeze. He bends down to pick up something. A coin? A rock? His hat falls off. He straightens up, chuckling, alone, vulnerable, oblivious. This would be the moment. But something shifts. A door creaks nearby. A child laughs behind a shutter. A dog barks, one street over. The world feels too full somehow. Not the right silence, not the right stillness. You wait. He moves on. You don't strike. Because here's the thing. Being an assassin isn't about bloodlust. It's about timing. About knowing when the world won't notice a life vanish. And tonight, the world's just a little too awake. You loop around and take a different path back to the safe house. It's still early. There will be other chances. You stop at a public fountain and rinse your hands. The glove is still dry, still folded. You don't like using it. Something about it feels too ceremonial, too neat. Besides, you never liked gloves. They dull the senses. And you need your senses sharp. You're not the fastest, not the strongest. But you feel things others miss. A twitch in a guard's step. A whisper too soft for conversation. The rustle of a cloak that wasn't there a moment ago. You head to a tavern, you know, not to drink but to listen. The Blind Pig. is the kind of place where rumors ferment faster than ale. You sit in the corner, hood up, one hand on your cup and the other under the table. Always. A bard strums a lute with more enthusiasm than skill. A pair of traders argue about spice prices, and two guards laugh loudly about some monk getting robbed by pigeons. You raise an eyebrow. Sounds about right. You stay until the fire burns low and the barmaid starts giving you the side eye. Then you slip out the back and return to Candle Street. This time, the target is alone again, leaving the apothecary with a limp in his gait and a bottle in his hand. The alley is empty. The moon is hiding. The silence is perfect. You step forward. You don't speak. You don't hesitate. You use the smaller blade, less mess. The glove slips on like second skin. It's over in a blink. You catch him as he falls. Lower him gently. A whisper of motion. You take the pouch from his belt. It jingles. You slip into the shadows before the air remembers what happened. Later, you return to the cloister. Alric is waiting. You drop the pouch at his feet. It's done. He nods. He doesn't ask for proof. That's the thing with monks. They don't want the details. They want the story to end. You walk away before he starts to pray. The glove. You toss it into a gutter. Let God see your hand. You're not hiding anymore. You're ankle deep in medieval slush, and none of it smells like anything that should exist. Candle Street's charm fades quickly when you're crawling through a drainage tunnel underneath it, nose to moldy stone, trying not to gag. A rat scurries across your hand. You don't flinch. At this point, you and rats have a mutual understanding. They ignore you. You don't name them. This is the part no one ever writes songs about. No minstrel plucks his lute to sing, "O noble blade who slid through filth to make the kill." But this is the work. Sewers, gutters, root cellars, and the occasional crawl space that makes your joints mutiny. You need to get into a manor. Not the front door, of course. Not even the servant's entrance. That's suicide. No, you found a narrow culvert that runs under the garden wall and up into the pantry cellar. It was either that or try scaling a wall patrolled by guards who look like they bench press oxen. You slink forward. Your cloak drags behind you, now saturated with things better left undescribed. The stone tunnel narrows, forcing you to press sideways like a fish going through a coin slot. You curse softly. This was not how you imagined the glamorous life of a killer for hire. You imagined velvet, maybe masks. The worst part, it's not even raining. This stench is old, ancient, passed down from one poor soul to the next. A legacy of rot. You finally emerge in darkness, breath ragged, skin crawling. A storeroom, barrels, root vegetables, maybe pickles, maybe something pickled long past edible. You listen, nothing. You rise, knees cracking, and brush yourself off. It doesn't help. This is your third infiltration this month, each one less dignified than the last. The first was a rooftop drop into a chimney. You got stuck halfway down and had to wait for the fire to burn out. Second was through a monastery crypt, bone dust, chanting, and one very startled novice who ran screaming before you could even draw your blade. But this might be the worst. Crawling through waste tunnels like some sad, murderous mole. You make your way to the cellar stairs, ears tuned for the creak of boots or the jingle of keys. Nothing. The manor is still. Historians still argue whether medieval castles and noble homes were truly as labyrinthine as stories suggest, or if our modern minds just romanticize every dusty corridor and musty alcove. You can confirm, most of them are just cold, damp, and poorly lit. You stub your toe twice before reaching the kitchen. It's empty, save for a mouse who clearly resents your presence. You flash a smile. "I'm not here for your cheese," you whisper. You move silently through the manor, pausing at doorways, listening to the snores of guards or the mutterings of dreams. The whole place smells like smoke, sweat, and something floral. You suspect there's a noblewoman nearby with access to imported oils. Your target tonight? A mid-level steward. Harmless on paper, but you've heard the rumors. He's been passing messages to the wrong kind of people. Monks again. Always monks. This one, however, might also be a smuggler. or a spy, or just an unfortunate soul who knows too much. You slip into his chambers with the quiet grace of a tired cat. He's asleep. Mouth open, one hand draped over a pile of scrolls. You approach, slowly, deliberately. Then, you freeze. He's murmuring in his sleep. A name. Not yours, but familiar. You lean in. He whispers it again. A name from your past. One that makes your stomach twist and your vision darken at the edges. Someone you thought was gone. You don't kill him. Not yet. You back away and vanish into the hallway before you even realize you've moved. Instinct. Survival. Curiosity. You're not sure which wins tonight. Back in the cellar, you crouch behind barrels, heart thudding like it's trying to escape your chest. That name, spoken by someone who shouldn't know it, changes everything. You were hired to end a loose thread. But what if that thread leads back to the people who first taught you how to disappear? The ones who taught you which herbs kill fast, and which ones make it look like natural causes. What if he knows where they are? You'll have to return, but not like this. Not now. You exit the manor the way you came, in reverse, crawling through the tunnel of medieval despair, trying not to scream when something brushes your cheek. Possibly a spider, possibly sentient filth. You'll never know. You emerge behind the outer wall, soaked and bruised. You collapse onto a patch of dry grass and exhale. You didn't finish the job. That's dangerous. You rarely leave jobs half done. It's not just about reputation. It's about balance. A job unfulfilled tends to echo. People talk. People look for you. People remember. But this isn't over. It's a pause. You stand, stretch your back, and start walking toward the edge of town. You need information. You need answers. And you definitely need a bath. Preferably one not located near a sewer outlet. As you fade into the trees, the stars overhead blink coldly. Somewhere behind you, the manor is silent once more. But you're not. Not tonight. You try to sleep. You really do. You lie on your back in the dusty rafters of an abandoned stable, arms crossed, eyes closed, breath steady. You count to 100, then backwards. You even hum that old lullaby your mother used to sing, the one with the sheep and the windmill, and probably a few hidden curses. Nothing works. Because every time your eyelids start to sag, you hear it. Creak. Or maybe it's more of a clink, or a shuffling footstep, a mouse, or something bigger. Definitely bigger. You sit up fast, blade half drawn. Silence. You wait. Still silence. This is what it's like, being a medieval assassin. Paranoia is your bedmate. Your dreams are half memories, half escape plans. You try to drift off, but your brain whispers, what if someone followed you? What if the monk sold you out? What if that goat was a spy? You roll over and curse under your breath. Sleep is the most valuable thing you never get. Even when you're exhausted, your body doesn't trust the night. It remembers the time someone tried to garrote you in your sleep. You woke up just in time. Your attacker? Another assassin. You'd never met him. Never even shared a target. He just wanted your boots. And you know what? You miss those boots. You sit up, rubbing your eyes. The moon filters in through broken slats in the roof. Somewhere below, a horse lets out a sleepy snort. You're not even sure whose stable this is. You just saw an empty hayloft and took your chance. Your current lodging has a rat problem, a wind problem, and a definite smell problem. But it's quiet. That's more than you can say for most nights. You pull your cloak tighter around you, even though it smells like yesterday's sewer crawl. It's all you've got. You try to think of peaceful things, flowing rivers, fresh bread, a clean shirt. Nope, now you're just sad. You sit completely still and let your ears do the work. A breeze sighs through the cracks. Wood creaks. Nothing sinister. You exhale. Then, footsteps. Not heavy, not close. Just the barest shuffle on the straw-strewn floor below. You freeze. You ease your hand to your knife. Another step. A pause. You can't tell if it's human. Could be a thief. Could be a drunk. Could be the stable's actual owner wondering why his hay smells like existential crisis. You inch toward the edge of the loft and peer down. Nothing. Just shadows and a sleeping donkey. You retreat, slowly. But you won't sleep now. Not a chance. Your nerves are dancing a hornpipe. You lie back down, blade in hand, and try again. 1 sheep. 2 sheep. 3 Scrape. That's it. You're up, sliding to the edge, cloak trailing behind you like a sulky ghost. You drop silently to the floor. Your joints complain, but you ignore them. The night has gone quiet again. Too quiet. You circle the stall, every sense straining. Still nothing. You check the door, latched. You check the walls, solid. You check the donkey, still asleep. You even whisper an apology for waking it. Eventually, you give up. You settle near the wall, blade on your lap, back against the cold stone. You're not going back up to the loft. Not tonight. The stable doesn't feel safe. Not really. But what does anymore? You watch the stars through a crack in the roof. You think about what safety used to mean. A fire, a locked door, a friendly voice. Now, it means silence. It means knowing where all the exits are. It means having your dagger out before your dreams even begin. There's a reason assassins don't live long. It's not the swordplay or the poisons. It's the sleep, or the lack of it. Historians still argue whether assassins use drugs to force rest. Opium, henbane, valerian. But you know from experience that nothing clears your head like sitting in the dark, weapon in hand, wondering if you'll see the sun. You nod off for a minute, maybe 2. You wake with a start when a bird shrieks outside. You blink. The horizon's starting to lighten. Somehow, you made it to morning. You stretch slowly, stiff as old bread, and rise. Every joint pops. Your back feels like someone slept on you. You check your boots. Still yours. You step outside. The world is waking again. Farmers shout in the distance. A bell rings somewhere uphill. Smoke rises from a chimney. Life goes on. And you're still here. Tired, dirty, still alive. You shuffle down the road toward your hideout. One hand on your belt, one eye on the rooftops. Sleep can wait. You sit hunched over a chipped wooden table in your safe house. If one could call a drafty mill with a suspicious puddle in the corner safe. Before you, laid out like ingredients for the worst soup ever, are small glass vials, a dried toadstool, a blackened spoon, and a pinch of powder that might be flour or finely ground danger. This is poison making, the assassin's least favorite hobby. You pick up the dried mushroom and squint at it. Brown, warty, looks like something a sick tree coughed up. You sniff it. Bad idea. Your nose curls and your eyes water immediately. Definitely the kind of thing that either kills you or turns your insides into interpretive dancers. You drop it into a mortar and begin to crush it. The pestle grinds in slow, rhythmic circles. Grit, scrape, grit. You mutter to yourself. Not words, just that guttural noise people make when trying to concentrate on something that might explode. Poison is fickle. It's not like a dagger. You can't polish it and know it works. You have to trust the plants, the measurements, the rumors. Because let's be honest, most medieval assassins aren't apothecaries. You once saw a man poison himself because he confused parsley with hemlock. Honest mistake. Still fatal. And even if you get it right, there's always the timing. Too much and it's obvious. Too little and your target just farts dramatically and walks away. You've seen that too. You remember your worst poison job. A noblewoman who sipped the cup, set it down, and stared straight at you. Is this supposed to do something? she asked. You nodded. It did, eventually. 3 days later, she fell asleep in a bath and never woke up. The steward got the credit. He still brags about it. You haven't forgotten. You finish the mixture and scoop it into a small vial. You label it with a symbol you invented. Looks like a frog sitting on a skull. You find it funny. No one else does. You have 5 poisons in your kit now. Nightshade oil, fast but bitter. Mandrake syrup, good for sleep, better for silence. Ground toadstool, slow, theatrical, might cause hallucinations. Rat powder, not for people, but you've never respected that rule. The whisper, your own creation, unreliable, but poetic. You store the vials in a hollowed-out book of psalms. No one checks a monk's reading material, unless they're a bishop, or you. Historians still argue whether poisons were widely used in medieval Europe, or whether we just blame every mysterious death on them. The truth is messier. Some nobles died of bad clams. Others were assassinated by salad. You once saw a man perish after licking a suspicious spoon. His last words were, "Is that cinnamon?" You examine the vials one last time, then tuck them away. Carefully. You don't want a repeat of the accidental elbow incident from last winter. The smell lingered for days, and the floorboards still don't forgive you. You lean back in your chair and stretch. Your spine crackles like a campfire. You haven't eaten today. You glance toward the cupboard, which contains half a loaf of suspicious bread, a bit of salted fish, and an apple that looks like it gave up online. You chew slowly, watching the wind through the slats in the wall. You think about poison, not the stuff in the vials, but the way it leaks into your life. The way this job has made you wary of gifts, wary of food, wary of kindness. A baker smiles too wide, might be poison. A client offers you wine, definitely poison. Someone compliments your cloak. Okay, maybe not poison, but still weird. You once had a lover who brought you wild strawberries. Fresh, sweet, beautiful. You didn't eat them, not even one. You waited until they left, then fed them to a goat. The goat lived, but you didn't call the lover back. That's poison too. You pack your tools, careful to wrap the sharp glass in linen. You double knot the pouch and tuck it deep into your satchel. Poison is a last resort, but it's a good one. It doesn't shout. It doesn't leave a trail. It just waits, and it always gets remembered. You leave the mill just as the sun slouches behind the trees. Time to scout the next location. Another noble, another smile with too many teeth. Another staircase where the railing might just give way at the right time. You pull your hood low and walk with the breeze. You pass a group of washerwomen laughing by the stream. They don't see you. You don't let them. You pass a merchant who smells of cloves and debt. He tips his hat. You keep walking. There's a stillness that settles around you when you carry poison, like you know a secret no one else does. Like death is hiding up your sleeve, and even you aren't sure if it'll come out today. You arrive near the manor just before dusk. The guards are lazy, the windows open, and in your pouch, 5 little vials wait. One of them might end a war. One of them might end you. You smile. Poison doesn't need applause. It just needs time. You knew the cloak was a mistake the moment you put it on. It looked good in the candlelight. Dark, heavy, dramatic. It made you feel like something out of a legend. Part shadow, part menace, with a hint of flair. But once you stepped outside, it became very clear. This thing swishes, loudly. With every step, it flaps like a dying bird. Every gust of wind turns it into a theatrical curtain, announcing your arrival. You might as well be wearing a bell. You creep down the alley, back pressed to damp stone, trying your best to silence the traitorous fabric. You pinch it in one hand, bunching it up like a sack of laundry, but it keeps slipping free, eager to dance. The locals are already suspicious of quiet figures in corners. Now you're the noisy shadow, the assassin who sounds like he's wrestling with a picnic blanket. You duck behind a barrel and exhale. You wanted this cloak, saved up for it. It was supposed to intimidate. Instead, it's getting you stared at by dogs. The idea of assassin fashion is mostly nonsense. Real assassins don't wear sleek leather armor with neat buckles and stylized insignias. You wear what fits, what blends, what doesn't get snagged on low-hanging signs. You once tried wearing a scarf, just a scarf because it felt mysterious. Then it got caught on a nail while fleeing a tavern, nearly lost your head and your dignity. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins ever used special garments, or if that's all just Renaissance stage play exaggeration. The truth is, nobody's sewing you a custom outfit when you can barely afford soup. You find most of your clothing in other people's closets. Occasionally, other people's corpses. You glance down now and sigh. The hem of your cloak is already fraying. It drags slightly on the left side, as if mocking your posture. And worst of all, it has a faint scent of mildew. Not enough to gag, just enough to follow you like a damp accusation. You consider ditching it, but something holds you back. Sentiment? Pride? The 5 copper pieces you paid for it? Either way, you tug it tighter and press forward. Your target tonight is attending a gathering, an exclusive feast held by Lord Brennick, a man known for hosting backroom deals and overcooked goose. You've heard whispers that tonight's meeting isn't just wine and bragging. There's talk of alliances, land grants, and someone being quietly removed from the chessboard. You hope it's not you. You scout the perimeter first. The manor is a squat, ugly thing, surrounded by a wall that thinks it's taller than it is. A single guard patrols the outer path, chewing something loudly. You time his loop, then slip inside between torch flickers. The shadows welcome you, mostly. The cloak protests again. You glare at it. You move toward the back, where the kitchen windows glow. Laughter wafts out, drunken, sloppy. You catch snatches of conversation. And then I told him, "That's no priest, that's my cousin." General hilarity. You roll your eyes and head for the servants' corridor. Always unlocked, always poorly lit. The stone floor is slick with spilled broth and recent humiliation. You glide through, pausing only once when a maid brushes past. She doesn't see you, or maybe she does, but decides she doesn't want to. You reach the hall. Your target is easy to spot, rich, red-faced, gesturing with a leg of something. He's not a noble, not really, just someone who bought his way into the room. You've been hired to make sure he doesn't survive dessert. But here's the issue. The cloak. You can't get close, not without being heard. It catches on chairs. It sweeps silverware to the floor. It knocks over a wine jug. You whisper an apology to the wine. It was innocent. You retreat into the hallway, fuming. You rip the cloak off. You fold it. You curse it. You stash it in a barrel full of turnips and pray no one finds it. You feel lighter instantly. You re-enter, now just a shadow in plain clothes, drab, dusty, silent. This is the real assassin's attire. A tunic, one size too small, a belt with more holes than leather, boots that whisper rather than stomp. You slip into the kitchen. The wine pitcher sits waiting. You palm a vial and drip a touch of mandrake into the mix. Slow, smooth, tasteless. The perfect lullaby. You carry it into the hall with a servant's ease. Head down, pace, casual. No one looks at you. That's the secret. Never look like you're trying to hide. You reach the table. You pour the wine. Your target lifts his cup, makes a crude joke, and drinks deeply. You step back and wait. Minutes pass. He begins to slur. He laughs too loudly. He falls face first into the roast. A collective groan goes up. Too much to drink again. The guards lift him from his plate and carry him out. No one suspects. No one remembers the servant who poured. You retrieve your cloak on the way out. You wear it again only long enough to get home. Then you fold it gently, set it on the floor, and weigh it down with a brick. Maybe it'll stop swishing in shame. Roofs are a lie. They look graceful from the ground. Those sloping tiles and neat wooden beams, promising height and mystery. But up close, they're slippery, uneven, and one bad step from breaking your spine. You're crouched now on one of those medieval death traps. gripping a chimney that smells like burned porridge and old socks, trying to stay perfectly still as two guards pass below. You're not supposed to be here, which is, of course, the whole point. Tonight's contract is a rooftop job. Classic. Drop in through a window, finish the task, disappear before anyone can yell murder. You've done it before, usually without incident. But this time, the tiles under your boots keep shifting like they've got better places to be. You inch forward, every muscle clenched, cloak tightly wound around your frame. Not that cloak. You left the swishy one at home. This is your quiet cloak, threadbare, patched, and blissfully silent. The wind picks up. Your balance wobbles. You grab the edge of a gable and whisper a prayer to any god listening to murderers. You're not picky. Below, the manor is lit with golden candlelight. Windows open to the summer air. Inside, you catch glimpses of music, dancing, nobles laughing at jokes that probably weren't funny. Your target is in there somewhere, a local magistrate, newly rich and newly corrupt. Rumor says he's been bribing his way through the court and arranging accidents for rivals. Someone decided it was his turn. You find the right window, on the upper floor, half shuttered, wide enough to slip through. You test the tiles with your foot. They groan. Of course they do. You lower yourself slowly, gripping the sill. One leg in, then the other. You're inside. You breathe out. Then step directly into a tray of fruit. The crash is deafening. Apples roll like startled mice across the floor. You freeze. Somewhere down the hall, voices rise. You scramble behind a curtain just as a servant pokes his head in. He looks around, mutters about clumsy lords, and disappears. You wait a long moment, heart hammering. This is the part no one tells you. The job isn't about the kill, it's about the in-between. The moments where silence must be absolute, where a sneeze could cost your life, where a rolling apple becomes your biggest threat. You emerge, finally, and begin to explore. The room is lavish. Tapestries, gilded candlesticks, a bed big enough for 10 regrets. You cross to the hallway and peer out. Empty. You move. Down the corridor. Up a narrow stair. Past a window where moonlight makes you glow like a guilty thought. You duck into shadows. Always the shadows. You find the study. You know it's his by the sheer smugness of it. Overstuffed chairs. A portrait of himself above the hearth. A collection of expensive knives that have definitely never touched anything harder than cheese. You wait behind the curtain. He arrives. Alone. Whistling. Holding a goblet. You give it 2 minutes. Then you step out. He notices you a second too late. His mouth opens. You cross the room in 3 strides. The knife goes in fast, quiet. You hold him gently as he slumps, easing him into the chair. He looks surprised, not scared, just surprised. Maybe he thought he'd bought enough protection. You wipe the blade on his velvet sleeve. The door creaks. You freeze. Another voice. My lord? Someone's coming. You slip behind the tapestry, fingers on your garrote just in case. A servant enters, sees him slumped, and gasps. Drunk again? She mutters. She sets down a letter, adjusts his collar, and leaves. You exhale, slowly. She didn't see the blood. That's the trick. Fast, precise, no mess. Not always possible, but tonight, clean. You exit the way you came. Window, ledge, roof. Only now the wind has changed. Stronger, less friendly. You make it 2 steps before the tile shifts again. Your foot slides. You fall. You catch yourself on the gutter with one hand and a scream you bite off halfway. You hang there, cloak flapping, heart going feral. You pull yourself back with effort and very creative cursing. You crawl now. No standing, no swagger, just lizard-like desperation. You make it to the edge, drop to the stable roof, then to the ground. You roll, you groan, but you're alive. You disappear into the night, another shadow among many. Later, you sit on the riverbank, rinsing blood from your hands. A duck watches you with the same suspicion you usually reserve for priests and cheese vendors. You glance up at the rooftops, those lovely, deadly things. From the ground, they still look romantic, but you know better. They lie. You don't even hear the growl, just the sound of your boots squelching in something you sincerely hope is mud, followed by a low rumble that vibrates in your ribs like thunder trapped in a barrel. You freeze mid-step. Behind you, heavy panting, claws clicking against stone, a sniff that sounds far too deliberate. Guard dog. You're in trouble. You slowly turn your head, just enough to catch the shape in your periphery. Massive, black, probably part bear, part regret. It stares at you with yellow eyes and a mouth that looks built for tearing through doorframes. Or you. This wasn't in the plan. You were supposed to be in and out of the noble's manor before the candle burned halfway down. Quick recon, check the ledger on his desk, maybe leave a small warning carved into the chair leg. Standard stuff. Not a bark to be heard on your last visit. But tonight? Tonight, there's a new recruit on 4 legs, and he's clearly not here to play fetch. You inch back, slowly. You reach for your pouch. You do have meat, kind of. It's a bit of jerky that's been riding in your cloak for 3 days. Smells like despair and salt. You toss it gently. The dog doesn't even blink. It growls louder. You murmur softly, something between a lullaby and a bribe. Easy now. No sudden moves. Let's not wake the household. Historians still argue whether medieval guard dogs were bred specifically for detection or just happened to be big, mean, and available. Either way, you're looking at the result of generations of people yelling, "Get him!" at the family pet. You consider your options. You could run, but there's open ground behind you. And you've seen this breed before. They're fast, surprisingly fast. You could fight, but even with a blade, you'd rather not test your odds against something whose teeth are longer than your fingers. So you go with option 3, climb. You leap for the side wall, an old wooden trellis covered in withered vines. It creaks under your weight. The dog barks, full-throated now, and lunges. You haul yourself up just as it snaps at your heel. You scramble to the top of the wall and roll off the other side, landing in a cart of hay with a whump and a cloud of musty dust. Your heart is sprinting. Your brain is yelling. From the other side of the wall, the dog snarls, claws scratching at stone. You sit up in the hay, coughing. "Good boy," you mutter. You dust yourself off and slide down, limping into the shadows. The dog keeps barking, loud and persistent. Windows are lighting up. Someone yells. You need to disappear. You duck into an alley, climb a drain pipe, and hide on a slanted roof. It's not comfortable, but at least there are no fangs here. Just a sleeping pigeon 2 feet away and the eternal smell of wet wood. You sigh. This was supposed to be simple. That's the thing about this job. You plan. You map the patrols. You time the candles. But it's always the unexpected. Dogs, servants, loose floorboards that nearly kill you. Once, you were halfway through an infiltration when a toddler wandered into the room. No one told you the noble had grandchildren. You froze. The kid stared at you, then handed you a stuffed goose. You left through the window and didn't take the contract. It felt wrong. You still have the goose. Eventually, the barking stops. The dog, presumably, has been bribed with someone else's jerky. You drop back to street level and circle wide, away from the manor. You'll try again another night, this time with sausages. You reach your mill just before dawn, legs aching, cloak torn near the hem. You light a candle, check your gear, and drop onto your bedroll like a sack of rocks. You still hear the growling in your head. You make a mental note. No more assuming nobles don't upgrade security, especially not with muscle that has fangs and a bad attitude. You stare at the ceiling, replaying the night. Could have been worse. You could be missing a limb, or your boots. Sleep comes slow, but it comes. And in your dream, you're being chased by that dog. Only now it talks, and it wants your cloak. You wake up broke, again. You check your pouch. 3 copper coins, 2 buttons, 1 wooden, 1 decorative, a pebble you keep forgetting to throw away, and a bit of wax you were sure would be useful someday. That's not payment. That's a pocket-sized insult. You sit on the edge of your makeshift bed and stare at the wall. Maybe you missed a coin in your boot. You check. Nope, just a hole you hadn't noticed before. Wonderful. This isn't your first time being paid in lies, but it still stings. You remember the client clearly. Noble robes, soft hands, a voice like someone who's never carried anything heavier than a grape. He handed you a pouch after the job. A bonus, he said with a smile. You were too tired to check it then, too focused on leaving without alerting his guards, too trusting. Rookie mistake. Again. You pour the pouch onto the table. The coins gleam. At first glance, they're silver. By the third blink, you see the truth. Tin, plated, laughably fake. The kind of coin you'd give a child to play with. You pick one up and bite it. It bends like warm cheese. You swear softly. You're hungry, sore, and now unpaid. This is one of the worst parts of the job. Not the danger, not the loneliness, but the bitter taste of being cheated by the people you just protected. Or, in this case, eliminated someone for. Historians still argue whether contract killers were regularly stiffed, or if most payments were handled honorably in medieval times. From where you're sitting, with your boots worn through and a belly full of boiled disappointment, you know the truth. Trusting a noble is like shaking hands with a scorpion and hoping for a hug. You stand, gather your gear, and head to town. Not for revenge. Not yet. First, you need food. You stop at a bakery. The smell of fresh bread hits you like a memory of a better life. The baker eyes you warily. You hold up your last real coin and point at the smallest loaf. She nods, slides it over without a word. You eat sitting on a barrel outside, chewing slowly. It's dry, barely salted, but it's warm, and for a moment, that's enough. Then you hear laughter. Behind you, 2 young nobles, maybe 19, dressed like they've never sweated in their lives. One holds a coin identical to the fakes in your pouch. "We paid him with this," he crows. "Didn't even blink." They laugh harder. One makes a throat-slitting gesture and mocks your limp. The other clutches his stomach, gasping. You don't move. You don't even look at them. But inside, something shifts. Later, you follow them, quietly. You're not proud of it. You don't plan anything, but your feet have their own idea of justice tonight. They head to a tavern. The Gilded Hen, loud, gaudy, guards out front, but more for show than safety. You wait until they're inside, then pay a beggar 2 copper to fetch a horse for one of them. "Tell him it's urgent," you say. "Someone's stealing it." The beggar grins and runs. 10 minutes later, one noble stumbles out, cursing and adjusting his belt. You trail him around the corner, where the alley is tight and dark and smells like spilled wine and old ambition. You don't draw a weapon, you just lean into the shadows and whisper, "Nice coin." He jumps, spins, sees nothing. Then you step forward, just enough to let the moonlight hit your face. Recognition blooms in his eyes. You smile. He bolts. You don't chase. You just watch him run, cloak flapping, fear replacing the smugness from earlier. It's not payment, but it's something. You return to your safe house. The fake coins still gleam on your table like a joke with bad timing. You gather them, walk to the river, and toss them in, one at a time. Plink, plink, plink. You imagine each splash is a promise. You will be paid, properly. Eventually, you'll make sure of it. Later, as you patch the hole in your boot with scrap cloth and silent fury, you think about coin again. How it rules everything. How it buys safety, silence, death. How you never seem to hold on to it for long, but you still have your knives. And your name. That's worth something. Even if the nobles keep trying to pay you like a fool. Children are the worst. Not in general, no. Some are fine. Some even remind you of yourself before everything got complicated and stabby. But tonight, a child becomes your biggest problem. It starts with a rooftop. Again, you're halfway through a contract. Target. Low-ranking noble, not too careful, likes to gamble more than he should. You've tracked him to a private gaming den above a candlemaker's shop. Getting in is easy. 2 roofs, 1 hop, no barking dog this time. Progress. You perch near a vent in the slanted roof, listening. Laughter, clinking coins, 1 dramatic groan, someone's losing. You ease the panel open and peer inside. There he is, your target, wearing a crimson doublet, slapping the table like he owns the city. He doesn't. You know who does. That man is next week's problem. You start to lower yourself onto the support beam when a high-pitched voice slices through the air like a poorly tuned lute. "Are you a birdman?" You freeze. You glance left. There, 3 feet away, crouched like a toad in the gutter, a child, grubby face, bright eyes, holding a piece of bread and staring at you with intense curiosity. "No," you whisper. He tilts his head. "You're on the roof." "So are you." He shrugs. "I'm small. You're dressed weird." You close your eyes. "Go away." "Are you going to kill someone?" You stare at him, stunned. He grins. "My uncle says men in black on roofs are usually killers." You give him your best intimidating scowl. He doesn't flinch. He takes a bite of his bread and swings his legs like you're just part of the evening entertainment. This is bad. If he screams, your cover's blown. If he tells someone, same. If he keeps watching, well, you're not great with an audience. You whisper, "If you stay quiet, I'll give you something." He narrows his eyes. "What?" You dig into your pouch and pull out a small wooden carving, a hound with 1 missing ear. You carved it months ago on a long stakeout when you thought you might go mad. His eyes light up. "Is it cursed?" "Sure." He beams. "Cool." He takes it and vanishes into the darkness like a smoke ring. You stare after him, stunned. Then slowly, you resume your position. But your rhythm is off now. You drop into the beam a little too hard. The wood groans. Below, a few men glance up. You freeze. Then one of them laughs. Probably rats. They return to their dice. Your heartbeat does not return to normal. You wait for the right moment. It comes during a toast. Your target lifts his cup, and you drop a single powder-filled pellet down the vent. It dissolves instantly, scentless. It'll make him drowsy. Very drowsy. You exit the way you came, leaping from roof to roof, with the grace of a man still wondering how a child got the drop on him. Back in your safe house, you find a note tucked under the door. Smudged ink, rough paper. "Thank you for the dog. I named it Murder." You sigh, then smile. Just a little. You've worked with worse witnesses. Still, it rattles you. Children aren't supposed to be part of your world. You avoid families, avoid homes where the laughter's too bright. This job requires distance. If you start seeing faces, not targets, it gets messy. You think back to another child. Years ago. A girl, maybe 8. She saw you exiting a manor at dawn. Bloody, shaking. She said nothing, just stared. You handed her a silver coin and vanished. That night, you heard her father had been paid to keep quiet. You still wonder what she remembers. If she dreams about the shadow with the coin, if she kept it. Historians still debate whether assassins in medieval Europe had codes, rules against harming innocents or children. Some argue for romanticized creeds. Others say money was the only code. You have a rule. You don't kill children. You don't threaten them. But you don't like them seeing you either. That little rooftop boy knows your face. That's dangerous. You spend the next day tracking him, just in case. He lives near the old tannery, plays in the mud, steals pears from the widow's cart. He's not dangerous, just curious. You leave a loaf of bread on his windowsill and disappear before he sees you. That night, you sleep uneasily, not from guilt, from the sense that somehow your shadow brushed against something innocent and left a mark. You slip into the cathedral through the side door, the one with the broken hinge and the chipped carving of Saint whoever. Inside, it's cold. Not the honest cold of the streets, but the solemn, sacred kind. The chill of stone soaked in incense and silence. Your footsteps echo despite your best efforts. The place hears everything. You're not here to pray. You're here to hide. The city's guards are sniffing around after last week's incident with the noble who fell asleep and never woke up. Seems someone finally figured out he wasn't just a poor drinker. You've been careful, but care can only do so much when your face is spotted near the wrong wine pitcher. So you hide in a church, which is a problem because the church hates you. Not personally, not specifically, just broadly. People like you tend to be filed under tools of Satan in the ecclesiastical paperwork. You've read those sermons, you've heard the mutterings from monks. Unnatural killers, souls beyond redemption, murderous cowards who hide behind night. Harsh, but not entirely inaccurate. You slide into a pew, hood up, posture meek. A few worshippers murmur prayers near the front. You pretend to bow your head. Mostly, you just watch. The priest, Father Gervais, is pacing slowly near the altar. You know him. Not well, but well enough. He's the kind who preaches mercy with a scowl. He's seen things, heard confessions that made him sweat. And he's looked at you before with that expression you've come to recognize. You don't belong here. He spots you now. His gaze lingers. Then he continues his slow loop, lips moving silently. You sit still, stone still. Historians still argue whether medieval clergy truly saw assassins and other criminals as lost souls to be saved, or simply tools of corruption, tolerated when convenient and condemned when not. The answer is probably yes. A little of both. Depends on the day and the tithe. You shift uncomfortably. The hard bench presses into your back. The air smells of wax and dried flowers. The woman next to you offers a weak smile. She has kind eyes. You look away before guilt forms a sentence. You've hidden in worse places. Sewers, crypts, a very uncomfortable flour barrel. But churches? They get under your skin. Not because you fear judgment. You passed that mile marker long ago. No, it's the quiet. The deliberate, hollow quiet that makes your thoughts echo too loud. You think about every job, every face, every goodbye that wasn't spoken. You think about your father, whatever fragments remain of him in your memory, and his calloused hands. You think about that rooftop boy, and how he called you Birdman. You stand abruptly. You don't belong here. But as you turn to leave, Father Gervais blocks your path. He says nothing at first, just studies your face. You carry the smell of blood, he says, almost gently. You meet his gaze. So do most butchers, he nods. And you think you're different? You offer a shrug. At least butchers don't pretend the cow deserved it, he sighs. You're not beyond God's mercy, but you walk very far from it. You want to scoff, to roll your eyes, but something about the way he says it, so quiet, so tired, makes you hesitate. Then his hand shifts. For a second you think he's reaching for a weapon. You tense, but he simply presses a small piece of bread into your palm. Communion, unblessed, just food, offered without strings. You blink. He whispers, "You'll need your strength." You don't thank him. You just nod and leave. Outside, the air is sharp with winter's warning. You bite into the bread, It's dry, crumbly, tastes like nothing, but it's real and warm. You walk fast, not looking back. You don't know if the church will help you. You don't know if it should. But today, it gave you something and didn't ask for anything in return. That's rare. You reach the edge of the city and duck into a thicket of trees. The hiding won't last forever. Sooner or later, you'll have to move again. Take a new job, vanish into another name. But for now, you sit. You pull your hood low, and you finish the bread. Bathing, you've decided, is the most dangerous act an assassin can commit. Not because of the vulnerability, though yes, soaking naked in lukewarm water while someone might be hunting you is risky, but because of what happens when you remove a week's worth of dirt, grime, blood, and maybe a bit of pickled onion juice. You become visible, noticeable, a person again. That's the real danger. You sit now in a wooden tub that leaks slightly from the base. The water is greyish-brown. You try not to think about how it got that way so fast. The bathhouse is quiet, late evening just before curfew. You paid extra for solitude and got it, though the woman who took your coin eyed you like she was memorizing your cheekbones. You sink lower. Everything stings. Old cuts, fresh bruises. One new scratch from a particularly judgmental pigeon. You exhale slowly and close your eyes. The warmth seeps in. Muscles uncoil. Your thoughts don't. Assassins in stories always smell like smoke and mystery. In reality, you usually smell like wet leather and bad decisions. But now, scrubbed and shivering, you smell like cheap soap and boiled lavender. Less menacing, more melancholy. You run a cloth down your arm and wince. There's a scar you don't remember earning. Probably from that rooftop fall last month, or the alley brawl with the man who tried to pay you in cabbage. Doesn't matter. The point is, your body is a map of everything that's gone wrong. You haven't had a proper bath in weeks, months, hard to tell. The last time, you remember someone shouting, "Thief!" from the street outside mid-soak. You left mid-rinse, tripping on your own trousers, hair full of lye. Got caught in the rain. Never quite felt clean since. Historians still argue whether medieval people bathed regularly or avoided it like a cursed cauldron. Truth is, some did, some didn't. You do, when it's safe, which is rarely. You lean back and listen to the sounds of water dripping and distant city bells. You imagine what life would be like if this could be normal. If you could scrub off everything, the blood, the names, the nights in corners. You hear footsteps outside, soft, measured. You tense. Your knife is just out of reach, tucked in your pile of folded clothes. You hate this, hate being exposed. The door creaks. A young attendant enters. She's small, bored, and clearly underpaid. She glances at you, nods, and sets down a towel. 10 more minutes, she mutters. Then I have to drain it. You nod. She leaves. You breathe again. You sit in the water until your fingers wrinkle like dried figs. You wash your face 3 times, as if you can rinse out your past. You can't. Eventually, you stand. You dry off, pull on your shirt, still damp from yesterday's fog, and lace your boots. They squelch faintly. You glance at yourself in the cracked mirror by the wall. You almost don't recognize the man staring back. Clean, yes, but tired. So very tired. You pull your hood up. The world rushes back in as you step into the night air. Cooler now. Fresher too. You smell like something unfamiliar. Hope. You head for the market square, where the baker's oven glows and the lamplighter hums. You buy a heel of bread and chew thoughtfully. You feel human. And that's a problem, because being human means remembering. It means caring. It means wanting more than shadows and silver. You glance down at your hands, still scarred, still steady. You may be clean now, but you're still who you are. That won't wash off. The tavern is loud, too loud. You slip in through the back entrance, the one near the stables where the pigs sometimes sleep. The scent is familiar. Smoke, sweat, spilled ale, and bad choices. You pull your hood low and take a seat at a corner table, angled so your back is against the wall. Always the wall, always facing the door. This is the dusty mug, a place where the ale is flat and the food might bite back. Perfect for disappearing. No one makes eye contact here unless they're selling something or starting something. You sit in silence, hoping for anonymity. What you get is the opposite. "Evening, stranger," someone says. A voice like gravel in a mug. You glance up. A man stands beside your table. Bald, big, looks like he could bench press your regrets. You say nothing. He doesn't go away. "You look like a man who's seen things," he says, dropping onto the bench opposite you without an invitation. "You got that? Don't mess with me or you'll disappear look." You sigh inwardly. You give him a nod, just enough to acknowledge, not enough to invite further conversation. But he grins. "I used to have that look," he says, slapping his chest. "Back in the war, Battle of Dunbrook. Ever heard of it?" You nod again. You have. You weren't there, but you once looted a tent afterward. He launches into a story about spears and mud and a man with no eyebrows who threw axes. You listen with one ear and scan the room. 3 drunks, 1 barmaid, a bard asleep in the corner, snoring into his lute. No guards. Good. The man finally winds down, chuckling. "What about you, eh? You look like you've done some things." You shrug. Silent type. "That's good. Safer that way." He raises his mug to you. "To ghosts." You clink out of politeness, but don't drink. This is what passes for socializing in your world. You come to a tavern not to be part of it, but to float above it, like smoke or a rumor. You watch others talk, laugh, spill secrets they'll regret tomorrow. You don't join in. You can't. You're not part of the world. Not really. You used to be. Once. You remember a time, years ago, when you had a name you used openly, when you shared a room with someone who smiled when you walked in, when you drank wine for taste, not cover. That version of you is gone. Now, you're the quiet man in the corner, the one who never quite fits, the one who never removes his cloak, even when the fire's hot. You finish your bread slowly. You're not hungry. You're just pretending to be someone who eats in public. The door opens. You glance up. 2 men enter, not locals. Sharp eyes, swords that look clean. They scan the room. You go still. They're looking for someone. Not you. Yet. They sit. They order. They talk in low voices. You relax a notch, but only a notch. This is what nights are now. Pretending to belong. Hoping no one sees too much. Listening for your name like it's a death sentence. The big man stands. "Good chat," he says. "You ever need a blade? Ask for Rollo." You nod. He leaves. You sit longer. The 2 newcomers drink slowly. One glances at you. You glance back. Just once. Enough to say, "I see you." They don't approach, but they don't forget you either. Eventually you slip out. You take the back alley, past the butcher's stall and the laundry line that smells faintly of lye and lamb. You double back twice. No footsteps behind you. You reach your safe house. You wait. Silence. Then you let yourself breathe. You're alone. For now. You sit by the window and stare out at the night. You think about Rollo, about his war stories, about the people who still can talk to strangers and mean it. You wonder if you'll ever be that again. You doubt it. Assassins don't get friends, just clients and ghosts. You sit cross-legged on the floor, holding a small wooden vial, staring at it like it's about to confess something. You squint, turn it over in your fingers, sniff the cork. Suspicious. Definitely suspicious. One of these is poison. The other also might be poison. You've forgotten which is which. This is what happens when you don't label things. It started as a simple test, experimenting with herbs you lifted from an herbalist who wouldn't stop humming. You wanted a sleeping draught, maybe something subtle. Instead, you created two identical mixtures, one that induces a brief, harmless coma, and one that makes your intestines file for divorce. The problem is, you moved them, rearranged your kit, then dropped the kit in a river, then dried it over a fire. Now everything smells like willow bark and regret. You pop the cork from one vial and hold it to your nose. Smells like dirt. You pop the other. Smells like more dirt. Great. You pour a drop of the first one onto your blade and decide to test it later on something that doesn't whimper or talk back. Maybe a rat. Maybe a turnip. Maybe your left boot, which is already half dead. You set the vials aside and roll your shoulders. Something cracks. Possibly you. This is your life now, experimenting with substances that can kill kings, or just make you vomit like a drunk noble at a midsummer feast. Poison is a delicate art. One slip, and the killer becomes the casualty. You remember the time you were commissioned to eliminate a merchant who refused to pay his protection fees. You disguised yourself as a servant and laced his plum wine. Only later did you realize you drank from the same cup out of habit. You spent the next 2 hours under his table, hallucinating that the carpet was judging you. He never noticed, still paid you, generously, in fact, said you had excellent timing. Historians still argue whether assassins of the medieval era used poison regularly, or whether it was just blamed for convenient deaths. There are records of sudden illnesses, of mysterious coughs, of nobles who retired to the countryside and were never heard from again. You know better. Sometimes, those nobles just hired a better assassin to preemptively retire you. You cap the vials and tuck them into a pouch lined with straw. Not ideal, but you're out of options. You keep your kit on your person now. Always. You once left it in a tavern latrine and had to climb through a very undignified chimney to retrieve it. The smell stayed with you for a month. So did the chimney soot. You take stock of the rest of your kit. Garrote wire, frayed but intact. Throwing knife, still dull. Still only useful if thrown really hard. Small flask of oil. You have no idea what it's for. It was in someone's belt. You took it. That's how most of your gear comes to you, through convenient borrowing. You feel a tug of exhaustion behind your eyes. It's late. You haven't slept properly in days, but you're afraid of sleeping. Not because of nightmares. Those are familiar, predictable. You fear sleep because you once woke up with a man standing over you, holding a candle and a spoon. You never did find out what the spoon was for. Instead of rest, you stand and stretch. You pace the floor. You rehearse hand movements, wrist rolls, draws. You practice your quiet step, heel to toe, roll, pause, shift, again. Then, just for the fun of it, or maybe to test your luck, you pull out both unlabeled vials, set them on the table, and flip a coin. Left hand gets vial 1, right hand vial 2. You pour a drop of each onto 2 separate pieces of dried meat. You give them to a pair of stray cats that wander near your door each night. They sniff, they nibble, then they curl up and sleep. You stare at them for an hour, still breathing. You exhale, a small victory. You mark the vials, finally. A crude X on the bottom of the weaker draft. You think it's the weaker one. You hope it is. If not, those cats are incredibly resilient. You glance out the window. Dawn is a smear on the horizon. Another job looms tonight. Another noble with enemies and too much jewelry. You'll need every trick you have, including the maybe poison. You lie back on your bedroll and close your eyes. One of the cats meows in its sleep. You envy it. You doze with your hand on the hilt of your dagger. If you're lucky, you'll wake up alone. If not, maybe the spoon man's come back. You watch the Baron from across the square, tucked behind a fruit cart that smells like overripe pears and merchant despair. He's pacing the balcony of his manor like a man rehearsing a monologue. Big gestures, dramatic pauses. If he had a cape, he'd be twirling it. Baron Orlin of Crossmere, wealthy, unbothered, with a face that looks like it's been preserved in smugness since birth. You were hired to watch him, not kill him. Not yet. Just observe, track movements, listen, learn. You expected corruption, gambling, maybe extortion. You weren't prepared for this. Because Orlin, he's running murder plots. 3 of them. You've only been on him for 3 days, and already you've overheard bribes passed in alleyways, secret meetings with cloaked riders, and a late-night speech about needing an unfortunate accident involving the mayor's wine cellar. No specifics, just strong, bury the evidence energy. You scribble notes into a tiny book disguised as a psalm collection. The irony isn't lost on you. Assassins usually deal with clients like Orlin, not stalk them. But this time, someone else paid you to follow him, an old widow, oddly enough. Claimed he had her son moved over a land dispute. Offered you 2 chickens and a gold coin. You said yes, not for the coin, for the look in her eyes. So now you're crouched behind apples, watching a baron plan his 5th crime of the morning. You're starting to feel inadequate. Historians still argue whether nobles of the Middle Ages truly orchestrated as many secret killings as legends suggest. Many of the deaths attributed to assassins may have simply been convenient accidents, or just very determined stares. But in Orlin's case, you don't have to guess. He's practically narrating the body count himself. You follow him that evening to a private dinner at the home of a merchant named Elric. The man is visibly nervous, hands twitching as he pours wine. Orlin, of course, doesn't drink it. He has his own flask. You suspect he poisons his own drinks just to stay sharp. From your rooftop perch, you can hear every word through the open shutters. "You'll sign the agreement," Orlin says, "or your daughter won't see next week's sunrise." Elric stammers. Orlin leans in. "I'm not threatening you, Elric. I'm educating you." You note the words carefully. Later, you track Orlin to a chapel. Strange choice, you think. But he doesn't pray. He meets with a cloaked figure who smells like steel and moss. "You'll handle the blacksmith and his boy," Orlin says. "Use fire. Blame the chimney. Make it convincing." You almost laugh. Because here's the thing. You've been hired to kill men for less. Orlin is the kind of client who normally hands you the pouch and says, "Make it quiet." Now you see him from the other side, and it's like watching someone forge the blade you've been handed 100 times. The difference: he doesn't get his hands dirty. He has people for that. He has you, or people like you. You begin to feel sick. Back in your safe house, you light a candle and read over your notes. The list grows. Names, places, meetings, times. You map out the web and find yourself at the center, not because you're involved, but because now you're the only one who knows it all. And that's dangerous. You could sell this information, blackmail him, warn the targets. You could even take a noble to court, though the court would likely pat you on the head and arrest you for suspicious posture. Or you could wait. See who hires you next. Maybe it'll be Orlin himself. Maybe he'll ask you to clean up one of his own messes. You wonder what you'll say. You remember the widow's eyes, the chickens, the way her voice shook when she said his name. You start sketching a plan, not for money, not for revenge, just for balance, just for once. The noble is worse than you, and this time, he's the one who won't see it coming. Disguises are overrated. They sound clever in stories. Assassins dressed as beggars, priests, noble cousins twice removed. But in real life, they itch, they sag, they fall apart at exactly the wrong moment. And the one you're wearing now is no exception. You're dressed as a monk, again, scratchy robe, sandals one size too small, a rope belt that's unraveling faster than your patience. And worst of all, the hood doesn't sit right. It keeps slipping forward, so you keep adjusting it, which, ironically, makes you look more suspicious. The plan was simple. Sneak into the city archives posing as a novice. Find the letter that proves Baron Orlin framed the widow's son for theft and passed the land deed to himself. Copy it. Deliver it anonymously to the bailiff. Easy. Except now, you're standing in the scriptorium courtyard, holding a basket of onions for penance duties, sweating through 3 layers of guilt because you might have just peeked at the laundry line behind the convent. That wasn't the plan. The nun who caught you narrowed her eyes and muttered something about impure thoughts. You stammered something about dust mites. Then you were handed the basket. You sigh and trudge across the stone walkway, trying to look holy. Monks are supposed to be invisible, right? The irony here, of course, is that you once robbed a monastery, years ago, took a chalice, sold it to a pawnbroker with no sense of style, felt bad about it for about half a day, until you got stabbed by a farmer with a grudge. Balance, as always. Historians still argue whether assassins truly used religious disguise, or if it's just fiction sold to make killers seem clever. Truth is, it works when the guards are lazy and the monks outnumber the soldiers. No one suspects the man muttering Latin to himself and sneezing into his sleeve. But monks aren't your style. You prefer to move, to blend, to disappear. Here, you stick out. Every time you walk, the sandals slap the flagstones like a drum solo. Every step says, "Not a real monk." You finally make it to the archive hall. The door is open. The scribe inside is asleep, ink dripping from his quill. You ease past him, duck into the shelves, and start scanning. Dust, cobwebs, scrolls labeled in Latin abbreviations that may or may not spell insults. You find it. The letter. You read it twice to be sure. Orlin ordered the arrest, called the boy disposable, signed it himself, with flair. You smile grimly, not because it's amusing, but because the world just handed you proof, and that never happens. You tuck the letter into your sleeve. Then, footsteps, fast, sharp. Not sandals. You press into the shelves. A guard enters, not one of the sleepy ones. This one's alert, looking for something, or someone. You freeze. He scans the room, snorts at the sleeping scribe, and walks out. You wait. 30 seconds, 60, then you move. You exit the archives, cross the courtyard, and almost make it to the rear gate when, "Brother," you turn. Slowly. It's a young nun, sharp eyes, holding your penance basket. You forgot your onions. You blink. "I already offered them? To whom?" You pause. Think fast. "To Saint Arugula," you say. She frowns. "I've never heard of her. She's new." There's a moment. Then she snorts. "Go." You go. Fast. You duck into a side alley, rip off the robe, and toss the sandals into a compost heap. Back in your boots, you feel like yourself again. A person. A blade in motion. Later that night, you hand the letter, carefully copied and sealed, to a man who knows a man who works for the bailiff. He doesn't ask questions, just nods. You watch from a distance the next day as Orlin is summoned for inquiry. He doesn't flinch. Of course not. But he's sweating. Just a little. It's enough. You vanish before he turns. You're not done with him. But now you've planted the seed. And soon, the noble who thought he could bury everyone else will find himself buried in paper. The letter spreads faster than fire in a dry barn. You hear whispers in the tavern before noon. The baker is gossiping with the butcher about Orlin's land grab scandal. A stable hand swears he saw the Baron yell at a city clerk so hard, the man fell backward into a barrel of fish. You nearly choke on your bread. By evening, a boy on a street corner is yelling, "Baron under inquiry! Corruption revealed! Read all about it!" He's waving a pamphlet. You grab one. The ink's still wet. There it is, your copied letter, word for word. Headline reads, Justice for the widow's son. You didn't write that part. That was the printer's flair. Still, it's satisfying. You sit on a rooftop and watch the manor below. For the first time in weeks, Orlin isn't pacing. He's shut up inside, windows dark. Even his guards look bored and nervous. You almost feel sorry for him. Almost. You're not used to this. Justice without a blade. An enemy falling not by your hand, but by your handwriting. You were trained to cut, to silence. But this is power. Historians still argue whether assassins ever operated as agents of justice, vigilantes with blades. Most dismiss the idea as romantic nonsense, but some accounts whisper of shadowy figures who chose their targets, not by coin, but by code. You wonder if you've crossed into that territory, or if you're just temporarily moral. Either way, your name isn't in the letter. No one knows you did it. That's the rule. That's always been the rule. You're supposed to vanish after the job. A ghost, a suggestion. And yet, you find yourself lingering. You pass the widow's house that night. The shutters are open. There's candlelight inside. Laughter, a sound that catches you off guard. Warmth, after weeks of cold. She sees you in the street, just for a second. Her eyes widen. You turn, start to walk. But then she calls out, "Wait!" You freeze. You don't turn, but your feet stop. "I know it was you," she says softly. You don't answer. "You didn't have to," she adds. Still, silence. She steps closer, voice low. "He tried to ruin everything we had. And you didn't even take the rest of the payment." You remember the 2 chickens. You left them in the alley for a family of orphans who were eating bark. "I just wanted someone to listen," she says. "Thank you." You nod, once, then disappear into the fog. Later, you sit alone in your safe house, the candle burning low. You should be planning your next job, repacking your kit, moving on. Instead, you stare at the wall. What happens now? Orlin will fight back. He has money, influence. He'll deny, maybe burn documents, maybe bribe the bailiff. You know his kind. But now, he's wounded, off balance, and you know where to strike. This isn't over. You're no longer just a blade. You're a witness, a shadow with teeth. You smile, just a little. Tomorrow, you'll start digging again. Follow the paper trail. Speak to the clerk who saw the altered land deeds. Track the steward who left town after Orlin's last estate sale. You'll build the story, not to publish, not for glory, just so when the final blow lands, it lands hard and it lasts. Justice, after all, isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives in silence. Sometimes it's wearing a hood. And sometimes it writes better than it stabs. Your quill scratches across the parchment. A slow rhythm that almost lulls you into forgetting the damp chill of your safe house. You've never written this much in your life. Notes, dates, names, aliases. Everything about Baron Orlin's web. Each strand pulled tight, tugged gently until it leads to a new secret. You've filled 3 pages already, and you're only halfway through. You're not just gathering dirt. You're building a case, a dossier. It's a word you picked up from a foreign diplomat who bled out at your feet mumbling about evidence chains. At the time, you thought it sounded too proper for your line of work. Now you rather like it. You pause and flex your fingers. They ache. Not from wounds for once, but from writing. Assassins don't usually do paperwork. But tonight, you're not an assassin. You're an archivist of rot. You sip stale wine and go over the list again. Land seizures, false accusations, bribery, missing officials. One suspicious fire. One thing links them all. Orlin. He's careful, yes, but he's also arrogant. He keeps records. Hidden, coded, but real. That's what your new friend, the city clerk, told you. After a generous gift and a long talk over mead. You grin, just a little. The clerk even gave you a key. Said it opened a cabinet in Orlin's second study. The one no one talks about. You don't know whether to be impressed or worried. Probably both. Historians still argue whether nobles kept black books to record their illicit dealings, or whether that's a myth fed by playwrights and bitter cousins. You've seen enough to know. They do. Some burn them, some lock them away, some carry them on their person, close to the chest. Orlin? He hides his in plain sight, disguised as sermons. Bold move. You gather your tools. Tonight, you break into the manor. Not to kill, to read. You slip through the garden just before midnight. The roses are blooming late this year, their scent oddly defiant. The guards are posted, but not alert. You count their rounds. 15 steps to the gate, 12 back. A whistle on the turn. Predictable. That's their mistake. You scale the wall. Easy. A rope, a hook, one soft grunt. Inside, the halls are dark, but not empty. You move slow. Shadows stretch. A floorboard creaks, too loudly. You freeze. Nothing. You slide into the study. Not the main one, the other one. Behind the tapestry of the hunting scene, where the hounds are always winning. The room smells of leather, ink, and ambition. You find the cabinet. You use the key. It clicks. Inside, ledgers. Dozens of them. All identical. You flip through quickly. Names, numbers, land plots, legal abbreviations that mean yours now, not theirs. And there it is, the black book, bound in green, weirdly enough, titled Reflections on Ecclesiastical Virtue. You almost laugh. You open it, and you stop laughing. It's worse than you thought. Payments to enforcers, bribes to city watch, names of people who won't be problems anymore. Even a list of untrustworthy elements. And your name is on it. Misspelled, but clearly you. You pocket the book. You slip back out, retracing your steps, every movement measured. The guards still whistle, still turn, back over the wall, down the alley, into the fog. Safe. You light a candle and open the book again. It's all there. Everything. Orlin wrote his own ending. You just have to read it aloud. You're still deciding what to do next when the knock comes. Not a loud one, but sharp. 3 taps. You freeze. No one should know this place. You blow out the candle and reach for your blade. The knock again. 3 taps. Even. Calm. Not a threat. Yet. But not casual either. You stand motionless, knife in hand, back to the wall just beside the door. Whoever's out there doesn't speak, doesn't fidget, just waits. A second passes, then 2 more. You shift your grip on the hilt, and then a voice, low, female. I'm not here to kill you. Well, that's reassuring. You stay silent. Rule number 1. If someone claims they're not here to kill you, they probably are. Or they're very good at lying. Or they think you're about to do the killing and are trying to call time out. I have something you want, she says. You sigh, quietly. You hate it when people talk like riddles. You open the door just enough to see an eye. Brown, sharp, unblinking. You open it the rest of the way. The woman steps inside. She's cloaked, not armed, at least, not obviously. Her boots are travel-worn. Her face is smudged with ash, but her eyes don't miss a thing. You size each other up the way wolves do in dark woods. She lifts a satchel, drops it onto your table. It hits with a heavy thunk. You open it. More documents, more damning than yours. Letters in Orlin's own hand to mercenaries. Signed confessions from men you thought long gone. Even a map with marked graves outside the city wall. You look at her. She shrugs. My brother was on that list. You nod. Say nothing. I followed the trail, she continues. Same as you. But I'm not good at what you do. Getting in, getting out, being quiet. I needed someone who was. You sit. She sits across from you. You push the black book across the table. She reads. Her face stays neutral, but her fingers tighten. I want to burn his house to the ground, she says softly. You nod again. So do I. But that's not enough. No, you agree. It's not. She leans in. I want him to lose everything. Title, influence, power. I want him exiled, humiliated, left to rot with the same peasants he stole from. Poetic, you say. Just, she says. Historians still argue whether collaboration between vigilante agents ever occurred, or whether that's the stuff of folk songs and nighttime tales. Two avengers working in tandem, one blade, one voice. You've heard the songs, you've rolled your eyes at them, but now, maybe they weren't all fantasy. You make a plan. She knows where Orlin's vault is hidden. You know how to get in. She has a list of his allies. You know how to scare them. She has a name, Mirren. You give yours, not your real name, but close enough. You spend the next hour going over every detail. Dates, drop points, the scribe who'll publish the next wave of letters, the steward who'll testify if given safe passage. By dawn, you have a strategy. But more than that, you have a partner. It feels strange. You've worked alone for so long that having someone else at the table, someone who's not afraid of you, not hired by you, not planning to kill you, is almost unnerving. You're not sure if you like it, but you don't hate it either. You roll up the documents, tuck them into a case lined with oiled cloth. She watches you with quiet approval. She doesn't ask what your price is. You don't ask why her brother's name was crossed out in Orlin's book. Some silences are stronger than words. When she leaves, she says, 2 nights, East Gate. Be ready. You nod. She disappears into the mist. You stare at the closed door. Something feels different. Not just the mission. You. You've always been a shadow, but now, for the first time in a long time, you feel like a person, with purpose, with fire, and possibly with company. You get to work sharpening your blades and packing your papers, because sometimes justice wears a cloak, and sometimes it knocks 3 times. 2 nights later, you're crouched in a drainage culvert just outside the East Gate, soaked to the knees and smelling like mildew. The wind is picking up. A storm is threatening to ruin the whole plan with thunder and dramatic flair. You glance at the moon, then at the road, then at the gate guards, 2 of them, hunched under an awning, playing dice and complaining about soup. They're not your problem, not yet. You wait. You've always been good at waiting. Then Mirren appears. She moves like someone born in shadow, hood pulled low, cloak plastered to her shoulders by the damp. She sees you instantly, without looking. Just a flick of her fingers. You nod. She slides into the culvert beside you. No words, just breath. Mud. Readiness. You move. The plan is simple, or at least assassin simple. Get inside the manor, locate Orlin's vault, extract the full records, names, payments, secrets, the entire corruption ledger. Smuggle it out. Deliver copies to 3 pre-selected targets, the city clerk, the bailiff, and the wandering bard who can't stop writing catchy exposés. Public opinion will do the rest. Orlin won't survive it, not politically, not socially, and probably not physically, once the victims learn what he's done. It's poetic, really. You approach the manor wall from the north, through the hedgerows. Mirren goes first. She's light on her feet. You follow, over the wall, past the first garden, through a servant's entry, the same one you used weeks ago. This time, you're not carrying poison. Just rope and paper. You split up once inside. She takes the west wing. You take the study. Your fingers know the lock by now. Click. Open. You step into the room and freeze. The cabinet is open. Empty. Your stomach drops. You scan the room, No signs of struggle, no blood, no overturned furniture, just absence. You hear footsteps. Mirren appears in the doorway. They moved it, she says. You nod. Where? Basement. Vault under the chapel. You groan. Of course, he has a secret chapel vault. Historians still argue whether nobles actually built hidden vaults into their estates, or whether it's just dramatic flair added by paranoid descendants. But in Orlin's case, it tracks. Of course he'd hide his worst secrets beneath the altar where he fake cried during public prayers. The chapel is on the far side of the manor. You take back halls, moving silent as breath. The stained glass glows dimly in the moonlight. Rain begins to tap the roof above, like a warning. You find the vault door behind the altar, hidden beneath a stone relief of St. Oswald, patron of, ironically, lost causes. It's locked. Myron pulls out something sharp and metallic. You blink. You have lockpicks. She smirks. I'm not that untrained. She works the lock while you watch the door. Minutes pass. A click. It opens. Inside, shelves, chests, documents, scrolls bound in red twine, and in the middle, one black ledger. Not disguised, not hidden, just waiting. You step forward and stop, because Orlin is standing in the corner, cloaked, calm. You're persistent, he says. I'll give you that. Mirren draws a blade. You don't. You watch him, every twitch, every eye flick. I knew someone was behind the leak, he says. I assumed a disgruntled clerk, maybe a spurned cousin. But you, that's interesting. He steps forward. Tell me, what's your price? You raise an eyebrow. I can double it. Whatever you've been offered. Gold, land, a title if you want. Baron Assassin has a ring to it. You glance at Mirren, then at the ledger, then back at him. You take a step forward. No deal, you say softly. His eyes narrow. Mirren moves, fast, blade to his throat in a blink. He stiffens. You take the ledger. You turn to leave. I'll find you, he snarls. You pause. You already did. Then you nod at Mirren. She punches him, hard. He crumples, out cold. You step over him and vanish into the night, rain soaking your cloak, the ledger dry inside your satchel. Justice, after all, waits for no storm. And Orlin, he's just been excommunicated from his secrets. You and Mirren run, not from fear, no, from timing. From the very narrow window between, escaping with damning evidence and the morning bell when Orlin's house servants will find him unconscious in his secret vault. You've got maybe 2 hours, maybe less. You cut through the market square, then down a path behind the tanner's shop where the smell alone guarantees privacy. Mirren gags. You shrug. Safety has a scent, you say. She doesn't laugh, but her smirk's enough. Back at your safe house, now upgraded to a second-floor room above an old spice merchant's shuttered store, you light a single lantern. Mirren locks the door behind you. You set the ledger on the table with more care than you've ever shown any weapon. You both just stare at it for a moment. This is it. The real power. Not swords, not poison, but words, names, evidence, the entire web, rendered in neat handwriting by a man who clearly never imagined he'd be caught. Page after page of arrogance. You flip through. One entry jumps out. A magistrate paid off to falsify records. That explains the widow's son's sentence. Another page reveals kickbacks to the city watch. That explains their inaction. And there, yes, payments to the very same bard now writing songs about the noble who slipped on truth. Historians still argue whether political collapse in medieval cities was ever caused by small leaks like this, or if the damage always started at the top. But here you are, watching a man's empire buckle because he wrote down too much. You divide the contents of the ledger. One sealed copy for the bailiff, one for the city clerk, one for the bard, and one final copy for the widow. You really want her to have it? Mirren asks. You nod. Let her decide what to do with it. She earned that right. She watches you for a long moment, then helps fold the parchment. Later, as the first hints of dawn slide across the rooftops, you and Miren set out. 3 deliveries, 3 destinations. Quietly, no noise, no name. You hand the bard his copy while he's still yawning at his window. You tuck the bailiffs into his office desk before the guards change shift. You leave the city clerks under his morning loaf of bread. Then you head for the widow's house. You don't knock. You slip the parchment through a gap in the door and vanish. You're not here for thanks. Still, you pause in the alley, just for a second. You hear her gasp. You hear her say his name, Orlin, like a curse. Then a sob, then nothing. You walk away. Miren catches up to you by the riverbank, where the mist hugs the ground and the city feels like a place you can almost forgive. So, she says, what happens to him now? You shrug. Depends who reads the evidence first. She raises an eyebrow. You didn't kill him. No. Don't want to. Oh, I do, you say. But this is better. Public ruin. Permanent. She smiles. You're dangerous. You smirk. Only on weekdays. You sit together on a rock near the water's edge, letting silence settle between you. For the first time in weeks, there's no immediate threat, no timeline, just quiet, just the sound of water moving and the wind carrying whispers across the city. You half expect Orlin to send someone, a last desperate bid for damage control, but he doesn't. He's cornered, not by blades, by truth. You reach into your pouch and pull out the black book. The original. The one he wrote. The one that didn't get copied. Miren eyes it. You're keeping it? You nod. Insurance. She nods back. Doesn't question it. You watch the sun rise together. Then she stands. I'm heading west, she says. Someone out there's been forging court seals. Big job. Big enough. She hesitates. You could come. You look at the city, then at her, then shake your head. This place still owes me some stories. She nods once, then walks away. You don't stop her. Some partnerships are meant to burn, bright and short, but you have the ledger. You have your name scratched out in Orlin's careful pen. You have a city that's finally listening. And for the first time in a long while, you're not just surviving, you're changing something. Rain again. Not the hard, dramatic kind that pounds rooftops and sends dogs howling. No, this one drizzles. A lazy, moody downpour that slips into seams and dribbles down the back of your neck. It's the kind of rain that makes people mutter about curses and stay home, which suits you just fine. You're in the upper quarter today. Not sneaking exactly, just drifting. You've been watching Orlin's manor from a distance. For days now, the place has transformed, from a fortress of wealth into a sealed box of silence. The guards are fewer, the windows darker, even the stables are quiet, as though the horses know something's wrong. They're right. You pass a market stall selling carved saints and wooden spoons. The merchant, a woman with elbows like battle axes, leans in and whispers, "You hear? Baron's being summoned again." You nod politely. She leans closer. "Reckon it's true what they say, about the graves, about the bribes." You smile faintly and move on. Let the stories spread themselves. At the public square, a notice has been posted. A formal inquiry into Orlin's financial affairs. You count 4 seals. 1 from the city bailiff, 1 from the Merchants' Guild, 1 from the mayor's office, and 1, oddly enough, from the Brotherhood of Scribes. That last one? That's Miren's doing, you suspect. Somehow, she got them on board. You listen to the whispers around the square. Reckon he'll talk his way out? Not this time. Good. His taxes were murder. You keep walking. There's no more work to be done today. Historians still argue whether political scandals in medieval towns actually began with grassroots exposure like this, or whether such records were simply discovered by rival nobles looking for an excuse. Doesn't matter. You know the truth. You built it. You stop at a small bakery and buy a crusty roll. The woman behind the counter looks tired, but happy. "Free today," she says. "Thanks for, you know." You nod, unsure how she knows. But then again, cities are like soil. When you bury a seed, everyone starts guessing what you planted. You eat on the way back to your safe house. Inside, everything is as you left it. Clean, quiet. The ledger is still there, hidden behind a loose floorboard. Your tools are oiled, tucked neatly into their places. You haven't needed them for days. That's new. You sit by the window and watch the city breathe. It's not healed, not yet, but it's aware. And awareness is a powerful start. You wonder about Myron, whether she's found her seal forger, whether she's still in the West. You suspect she's halfway through another scandal already. She's that kind of woman. You think, briefly, of the widow. You haven't seen her since. You probably never will. That's the way this life goes. But you imagine her lighting a candle tonight, maybe smiling, maybe finally breathing easier. That's worth something. Even if no one ever carves your name into a monument, even if you vanish again tomorrow, even if years from now the city forgets who pulled the first thread, it won't matter. Because for once, the blade stayed sheathed, and justice came wrapped in parchment. A knock at the door. Not 3 taps this time, just one. You rise, cautious. Open it slowly. It's a boy, barefoot, wide-eyed. He holds out a folded note. No name. You open it. A single line. "A new list waits in the south. Come if you're ready." You look up. The boy's already gone. You stare at the note and smile. You slip the black ledger into your satchel, grab your cloak, and blow out the lantern. The road always calls. And you're always listening. The southern road greets you with mud. Thick, heavy, soul-sucking mud that clings to your boots like an accusation. The rain hasn't let up in days, and each mile feels twice as long as it should. Your cloak's soaked, your pack drips, but your mind's already sharp and working, eyes scanning every tree line, every set of distant hooves. You're not here for sightseeing, you're here for the list. The town of Westridge sits like a mossy blister on the edge of a forgotten marsh. Not a place anyone brags about being from, but it's quiet, remote, and according to the note, rotten to its core. You arrive just after dusk. The gatekeeper, a half-asleep man with one eye and a truly heroic nosewart, barely looks up as you pass. "Another pilgrim?" he mutters. You nod. Let him believe what he wants. The inn's no better. Smells like onions and defeat. The barkeep has more scars than smiles. But your room is upstairs, and most importantly, private. You wait until night deepens. Then you meet the contact. She arrives as expected, hooded, quiet, barefoot. She knocks twice, then once. Not quite your rhythm, but close enough. You open the door. It's not Mirren, but the girl resembles her. Same focus, same edge, younger, less weary, but already shadow-worn. She introduces herself as Isla. She doesn't ask for yours. She hands you a scroll. No wax seal, just a list of names. You unroll it. 15 names. At the top, the mayor of Westridge. Below that, the watch captain, the merchant guild's head, the apothecary, the grain officer. The deeper you go, the worse it looks. You whistle. "Busy town," you say. Isla nods. "Busy hiding things." She explains in clipped phrases that the entire supply chain for the region is controlled by 3 families. And those families have gotten very good at making disappearances look like floods, bad harvests, or bandit activity. You ask what happened to the last person who tried to expose them. She hesitates. "He's the one who wrote that note you got." "And?" "They found him in the marsh. No head, no list." You fold the scroll carefully. I assume they don't know I'm here. She shakes her head. Not yet, but they will. They always do. You sit in the room's one chair, damp cloak hissing against the back. Who else is with you? You ask. Isla shrugs. No one now. You narrow your eyes. So why me? She leans in. Because Miran said if things ever got too dark for her, she'd send me to someone who knows how to kill the right lies. You sigh. Miran always did have a poetic streak. All right, you say. Let's see what rot we can dig up. Historians still argue whether conspiracies this deep could have operated in backwater towns, or whether corruption of this scale only festered in cities. You don't argue. You've seen enough marshes to know they grow weeds just as thick. You send Isla to gather small details, rumors, routines, strange shipments. Meanwhile, you wander the town square under the guise of a spice trader's clerk. You listen. You watch. By midday, you already know 3 things. First, the mayor's house has a basement he denies exists. Second, the watch captain has 2 sets of payroll books, one for town ledgers, one for bribes. Third, there's a child missing from the baker's family. No one talks about it. No one has to. This list isn't just names, it's graves waiting to be dug up. You return to the inn with your boots caked in muck and your brain firing on all cylinders. Isla meets you in the hallway. She's holding another list. Where'd you get that? You ask. She hesitates. I followed the apothecary. You raise your eyebrows. And? She says nothing, just hands you the paper. At the top, inventory, shipment for mayor. Under it, herbs used to treat memory loss, sleep paralysis, and, most telling, one labeled essence of nightshade, diluted. You exhale. Poison? Slow, she says, but fatal. Looks like sickness. You nod. The puzzle's coming together. Now it's your move. You sit down at the small desk, pull out fresh parchment, and begin your own version of the list. Not names this time. Targets, one by one, each with a weakness, each with a trail. Because this time, you're not just going to uncover the truth. You're going to drag it, kicking and screaming, into the mud with you. Morning in Westridge feels like a dare. Grey clouds hang low over the village rooftops, and the muddy streets suck at your boots like they want to keep you here forever. You don't plan to stay that long, not with what you're about to do. You and Isla split up after breakfast. If you can call stale bread and tepid onion water breakfast. She's following the apothecary again. You're headed to the watch captain's office, where a second ledger waits behind a false wall. Or so your new friend, the sleep-deprived clerk, whispered after a few too many mugs of bitter ale. You reach the building with a smile on your face and a fake warrant in your pouch. You learned early that forged paperwork opens more doors than blades. The guard at the door waves you in after you flash the fake seal. He doesn't even look close, lazy, like the town itself, coasting on fear and routine. Inside, the place smells like wet parchment and overcooked beef. You count 6 people, 3 in uniform, 3 pretending not to see anything. You find the captain's office and slip in during the mid-morning lull, when even tyranny needs a lunch break. The hidden ledger is right where it should be, behind a loose panel carved to look like the town's crest. Inside, lists of payouts, rotations that never happened, bounties paid for bandits who don't exist. Historians still argue whether medieval law enforcement was this corrupt, or whether stories like these are exaggerated through hindsight. You're living proof that it wasn't just possible, it was policy. You copy the important pages. Not all, just enough to build a fire, and enough to know which guards are going to panic first. You return to the safe house by mid-afternoon. Isla's already waiting. Apothecary went to the mayor's house again, she says. Didn't knock, just walked in through the side door. Friend of the family, you ask. Poison supplier, she says. You believe her. Together, you spread your findings across the table. A map of bribes, blackmail, and whispers. It's not elegant, not yet. but the structure is there. And here's the dangerous part. Once you see the structure, it's easier to pull it down. We hit the guards first, you say. They fall. The mayor has no fists. Isla nods. You sketch a plan. A courier route that gets intercepted. A letter that gets leaked. A guard who suddenly realizes his pension's been pocketed and sings like a bird with a sore throat. Next, the apothecary. We expose her mixture records, Isla says. Make it public. You'd be amazed how fast people turn on a healer when they learn she's selling quieting potions. You grin. The bard again, you ask. He's busy, she replies. But I know a weaver who's also a gossip. We'll sew it into prayer flags. You pause. That's actually brilliant, she smirks. For the next 2 days, the town becomes a powder keg. One guard quits suddenly, claiming illness. Another gets caught stealing and blames the captain. The baker's missing child is suddenly remembered, and her neighbors demand answers. You feed the fire slowly, quietly, patiently. Then, the mayor makes a mistake. He throws a public feast. You attend, hooded and silent, watching from the rear of the square while he brags about grain stores and the strength of Westridge. Isla hands out ribbons to children, each stitched with phrases like, "Where is Elise?" and "Ask about the ledger." By the time dessert is served, the mayor's speech is drowned in whispers. That night, you return to the safe house and open a window. The breeze carries voices, not fear, not yet, but doubt. And doubt, you've learned, is deadlier than any dagger. You turn to Isla. Tomorrow, we go for the vault. She frowns. They have a vault? They always do, you say. And that's where the rest of the names are. She doesn't ask how you know. Maybe she already understands. Because in every town, in every corner of this twisted world, the real sins are hidden under lock and key. And you're getting very good at opening locks. The vault is underneath the mayor's house, because of course it is. Nothing says, "I'm definitely not hiding crimes," like a subterranean chamber beneath your dinner table. Isla confirms the location through the town stonemason, who once laid the foundation and now drinks too much and speaks too freely. You go in at dusk, not swords drawn, not torches blazing, just you and Isla, dressed as two scribes doing a surprise records audit, because nothing frightens corrupt officials more than a surprise with paperwork. The mayor's steward meets you at the door. You flash the same forged seal from your previous visits. He squints, frowns, and shrugs. Either he's in on it and doesn't care, or he's just the kind of person who fears authority, even fake authority. He leads you through the main hall, muttering about overzealous inspectors. When he turns to grab some documents, you drop a pinch of sleep dust in his tea, not subtle, but effective. He's snoring by the time you reach the stairs. Beneath the house, the air shifts, cooler, older. Stone walls, thick with moisture. Torches flicker in iron brackets. And then, you find the door. The vault is plain, heavy, dull iron with a simple lock, which honestly is a bit of a disappointment. You were expecting skull motifs or at least some flair. Isla raises an eyebrow. You pick the lock in under a minute. Inside, chests, scrolls, boxes, records stacked with obsessive precision. Nothing hidden, nothing coded. Just documented evil, neat and labeled. Bribes, shipments rerouted, names of troublesome citizens scheduled for quiet removal. Historians still argue whether corrupt nobles truly kept this level of meticulous detail, or whether such ledgers are a storytelling device. You've read enough to know, the truly arrogant don't fear discovery. They fear inconvenience. And so they organize. You both scan fast. The documents not only confirm everything you've exposed, they go further. The grain officer siphoned rations meant for flood victims and sold them across the border. The apothecary's orders included child-sized doses. And the mayor? He personally signed off on 10 relocations of families that once lived where his new stables now stand. It's almost too much. You pick a handful of the worst pages, roll them tight, and tuck them into your satchel. Isla grabs another stack, wraps them in oilskin. You glance at her. We could burn the rest, you say. She doesn't answer. You hand her a flask. For later, in case we need a bonfire. She nods. Let's go. But as you're turning to leave, you hear voices, footsteps, from above. Check the cellar, a deep voice orders. They're not upstairs. You lock eyes with Isla. Time for the back way. Every rich house has one. You find it in a corner, half hidden behind a tapestry, a servant's tunnel, narrow and dark. You squeeze through just as the main vault door begins to creak open behind you. You don't look back. The tunnel spits you out into a drainage channel behind the mayor's property. Muddy, low, mosquito-infested. You'd hate it if it weren't saving your life. You both run through the dark, ducking behind barrels and carts. No one follows. At the safe house, you collapse into chairs, dripping and filthy, but alive. Close one, Isla mutters. You grin. They'll wake up tomorrow with their lies exposed and their vault half empty. She unrolls one of the documents, eyes scanning. This is enough to bring them all down, she says quietly. We don't even need the bard this time. We give this to the merchant guild, to the scribes, to the families they displaced. You nod. But we give it fast. The clock is ticking. You split up again, like before. She heads east, toward the scribe hall. You go west, toward the merchant guild house. Along the way you pass familiar faces. The baker, the stable boy, the drunk mason. They all glance your way. Something's shifting in the town. Not fear, not quite hope, but attention. You deliver your packet with a whisper and a nod. The merchant master opens it, pale-faced, and doesn't ask questions. By nightfall, the scrolls are being read aloud in alleyways and posted to trees. People gather. Voices rise. You return to the safe house. Isla's already there. We lit the fire, she says. You nod, exhausted. Neither of you speaks again that night. There's nothing left to say. Tomorrow, the storm breaks. And this time, the thunder will be truth. Morning arrives with shouting, not the angry kind that comes from bar fights or domestic squabbles, but the wide-mouthed, breathless kind. Shouts that carry across rooftops and echo through the streets like the town itself is waking from a nightmare and naming names. You're already up, sitting by the window, watching it all unfold. Isla stands beside you, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Down in the square, a crowd has formed. Farmers, vendors, former guards, children half-dressed from sleep. They're holding the scrolls. Some are waving them. Others have copied lines onto scraps of cloth, hanging them on sticks like protest banners. We are not cargo. Where is the grain? You poisoned our trust. You'd clap if it didn't feel so serious. Within an hour, the mayor's estate is surrounded. The guards don't come out. Rumor says the watch captain fled during the night. The apothecary's shop, boarded up. She vanished, gone like the lies that once wrapped this town in silence. You slip into the crowd, hood low. Nobody recognizes you, and yet you see the work, your work, rippling through the square like waves from a stone dropped into water. This is the reckoning, and it's loud. The Merchant Guild issues a public statement condemning all acts of exploitation. Hypocritical? Probably, but strategic. They're saving face, and in doing so, legitimizing the accusations. The scribes post formal charges, stamped, signed, official. No one has seen the mayor all morning, but then, just before noon, the estate gates creak open. He walks out, alone. No guards, no escort, just a trembling man in silks, holding a rolled scroll and trying to keep his voice steady as the crowd presses in. I will cooperate, he says. All questions will be answered. Someone throws a turnip. Someone else laughs. But the crowd holds, for now. You and Isla don't wait for the full spectacle. You've seen this play before. Power doesn't collapse all at once. It erodes, grit by grit, truth by truth, until the foundation crumbles. Back at the safe house, she starts packing. "You leaving?" you ask. She nods. "I've got someone waiting in Ashvale, more names, another list." You smile. The world's full of them. "You coming?" You glance at the satchel in the corner, the black ledger, the folded cloak, the boots still wet from last night's mud run. "I think I'll stay," you say, "for a few more days, tie up loose ends." She nods once, doesn't argue. "Keep your eyes open," she says. "The ones at the top fall first. The ones hiding underneath. They wait. Always do." She leaves without ceremony. No long goodbye. Just a knock on the doorframe and a glance over her shoulder. Then she's gone. You sit alone for the first time in weeks. And yet, it doesn't feel like loneliness. It feels like quiet, earned. There's a knock at the door. Not the secret kind, not the messenger's rhythm. Just a plain, tired knock. You open it. It's the baker, the one whose daughter disappeared. She's holding a small bundle. Bread, still warm. And something else. A ribbon, stitched with your 3-beat knock. A silent thank you. You don't speak, just nod. She nods back and leaves. You close the door, sit down, and eat. Historians still argue whether justice in medieval towns ever truly worked, or whether the people just shifted blame and moved on. But you've come to realize something deeper. Justice isn't a sword. It's a thread. And once you pull it, everything starts to unravel. You sit at the desk and unroll a blank sheet of parchment. A new page, a new name. Because someone, somewhere, is already building another vault. And someone else will need you to open it. You stay one more night. Just one. Not because you're unsure, or because you're growing roots. Don't flatter yourself. You stay because you want to watch how a town breathes when its lungs aren't full of lies anymore. From your window, you see it. The square is quieter now. Not silent, but calmer. The kind of calm that comes when people realize fear isn't the only thing that keeps a community standing. The mayor was arrested, you heard. Not executed. Not hanged in the street like some demanded. He'll be tried, formally. That's what happens when people get loud and the right paper finds the right hands. The guards that didn't flee now answer to the town council. There's a vote happening tomorrow. First one in 20 years. Someone suggested the baker run. You smile at that. In your satchel is the black ledger. Still intact. Still damning. You don't carry it out of sentiment. You carry it because memory fades. And sometimes the only way to stop a wound from reopening is to show people the scar. You pack your things. Light, clean, efficient. You don't leave a note. You've never needed to. By dawn, you're already outside the town limits, walking along the marsh edge. Birds skim the water's surface. Dragonflies dart past. And somewhere in the reeds, something rustles, but it leaves you alone. Like the world knows better than to bother you now. You pull your cloak tighter and head south. No destination, just direction. Because the note said a new list was waiting. And you know, as sure as mud is wet and nobles lie, that the next town will have its own vault, its own missing daughter, its own Orlin or mayor or apothecary poisoning truth in tiny doses. You're not a hero. You're a lever. You get under rot and push. And with each ledger, with each whispered rumor turned into a bonfire, you remind the world. Even shadows cast light if you tilt the flame just right. And if you're lucky, if you're really lucky, someone in that next town will leave bread on your doorstep and a ribbon sewn with 3 quiet knocks. You walk on. No horse, no banner, no name, just the road. And a satchel full of receipts. And now, as your breath softens and your eyelids grow heavy, let your mind drift away from the damp, cobbled alleys and shuttered safe houses. Leave behind the rustling ledgers and the whispered confessions in lamplit vaults. Let the weight of hidden knives and shadowy missions slip gently from your shoulders. You did well tonight. You saw through lies, unraveled webs, moved unseen through cities that pretended not to notice until you forced them to look. You walked in silence, but the echoes of your footsteps changed the direction of entire towns. Let the candlelight in your imagination dim. Let the last parchment curl in the hearth's warmth. Feel the hush settle in, like a heavy blanket, tucking you beneath the stars of a sky that always watched but never judged. You are safe now. The rain has passed. The lanterns have all been doused, and the alleyways are quiet. The door is locked. The floor is swept. The ledger is closed. And out there in the dark, the next chapter waits. But not tonight. Tonight, the only thing left to do is rest. Let your thoughts slow. Let your breathing deepen. You are no longer hunted. You are no longer chasing. Just floating now, light as ash, on the edges of a story that remembers you. Sleep well, traveler. The road will wait.